Chapter 1899. The final scene was deeply engraved into Su Xiaolan's heart. For some reason, she was struck by a sense of unease. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but turn to Enlin, and she gripped onto Enlin's hand tightly. Enlin, what if? I'm saying what if my cultivation base is too high and I go too far in the pursuit of Tao? You'll follow me, right? You'll stay with me, right? Enlin. This was the most devastating thing that Enlin had ever heard. She was afraid that he wouldn't be able to keep up with her. Enlin analyzed in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. Xiaolan, you know how bad *SS I am. How could someone as bad *SS as me not be able to keep up with you? Even if I really can't keep up with you, why don't you just take care of me? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but cover her mouth in laughter at Enlin's heroic words. The heaven and earth phenomena lasted for an entire 2 hours. Almost all of the dragon tribe living beings were experiencing the blessings of the clear origin dragon's death. The little black dragon was also high up in the sky, allowing the azure raindrops to fall upon its body without any reaction. No one knew whether it was thinking about something or experiencing the blessings of the clear origin dragon's death. After the rain stopped, a very beautiful rainbow stretched across the sky, connecting the two ends of the earth. Enlin was even struck by the feeling that the rainbow before his eyes was not a rainbow, but rather a vibrant rainbow dragon that was displaying its most beautiful form to the world. The little black dragon slowly descended from the sky. All of the dragons on the Sea of Lightning bowed in salute. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Welcome back, Patriarch Azure Dragon. Voices of excitement and elation erupted throughout the entire heaven and earth. Father, Papa, the two little azure dragons' eyes were filled with tears as they yelled in unison. The little black dragon flew over and cradled the two little azure dragons in his arms. Oh, my God, look at my babies. You've grown so much in just a few tens of thousands of years. Whoa, Daddy. I thought you were going to leave us again after we finally got to see each other. The female azure dragon opened her claws and hugged the little black dragon in front of her tightly. Of course not. The little black dragon wore a gentle expression. Good job, Dad, for you to be able to successfully kill the dragon murderer. I could tell that the clear origin dragon was looking at me and my sister a long time ago. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to hide in the Dragon Dao pond and cultivate. The male azure dragon waved his claws in excitement. The little black dragon stroked the male azure dragon with an enraged expression. What's with your face? Tell Father. Father will avenge you. The wound on my face. I was accidentally slapped by my dad just now. The male azure dragon explained as he covered his swollen face. The little black dragon coldly snorted and said, You still haven't recovered from such a small wound. You're really embarrassing me. The little black dragon, That's right, what are your names? The black dragon asked. You haven't given us names yet. They all say that names are given to us by our parents. Since our parents aren't around, we haven't given ourselves names yet, the female azure dragon said in a crisp voice. Everyone calls us little azure dragons, the male azure dragon explained. All right, I'll think of a good name for you. The little black dragon nodded. All right, I'll think of a good name for you. The little black dragon nodded. The reunion between father and child was a very heartwarming and touching scene. Enlin listened silently, and he almost shed tears for the two little azure dragons. After that, the little black dragon chatted with all of the Dao integration stage true dragons. The little black dragon was none other than Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as an Azure Dragon, Enlin didn't really know. The little black dragon was none other than Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as Azure Dragon, Enlin didn't really know. Perhaps it was because he had once been green? The little black dragon was Patriarch Azure Dragon. As for why this little black dragon was referred to as an Azure Dragon, Enlin didn't know. Perhaps it was because he had once been cuckolded? The little black dragon arrived before Enlin, and it was still a little black dragon around 10 feet in length. Its figure was about the same as Enlin's, and its eyes were glowing with a bright light. giving it a very comfortable appearance. The little black dragon didn't unleash its bloodline pressure, and it gave off an ethereal and amiable feeling. And Lin, thank you so much. If it weren't for your help and cooperation, my chances of being reborn would be extremely slim. The little black dragon bowed. The mouths of the other true dragons all gaped open in shock upon seeing this. They had lived for so long, but this was the first time they had seen Patriarch Azure Dragon bow to another living being. You're welcome, Brother Azure Dragon. I'm very happy to see you regain your freedom, so I don't mind if my stomach hurts a little. And Lin smiled, but he was thinking to himself, did you hear that? You're hurting my stomach, so hurry up and make it up to me. The little black dragon chortled with glee upon hearing this. Mr. Lin, I'm truly blessed to have met you. We didn't communicate much at the time, but we were able to work together in unison and successfully overturn the clear origin dragon scheme. And Lin smiled but didn't say anything. Wasn't he going to get to the point? Did this little black dragon have such a low emotional intelligence that he didn't understand, or was he pretending not to understand? The little black dragon twisted its body. The Azure Dragon Heart essence does favor me, but it's still been tainted by the clear origin dragon's aura. I have to go refine the Azure Dragon Heart essence right away, so I'll be taking my leave. And Lin, you're my best friend, and the entire Azure Dragon tribe owes me a huge debt of gratitude. While I refine the Azure Dragon Heart essence, you can use all of the power of the Azure Dragon tribe within a reasonable range. The little black dragon waved a paw through the air as it spoke before disappearing on the spot. No one knew where it had gone. The veins on Lin's forehead bulged. There was no actual reward. There was no actual reward. Best friend? Had it forgotten that it had almost been killed by the clear origin dragon last time? To be honest, Lin really wanted to emulate Senior Qing Yuan and kill the little black dragon. Grandpa, where did Daddy go? The two adorable little azure dragons ran over with curious expressions. Lin replied, he went to the heavenly kingdom. The little azure dragon was extremely excited. Where is the heavenly kingdom? Is it a very powerful place? That's right, it's a very powerful place. He can live a carefree and happy life there. Lin put on a fake smile. I want to go there too. A yearning expression appeared on the little azure dragon's face. Lin smiled. All right, I'll take you to the heavenly kingdom on the Dragon Origin Star, within the Battle Palace. Lin used his identity as the little black dragon to access the most detailed star map. A boundless star map appeared before his eyes, which corresponded to the position of the stars in the sky. Furthermore, the star map could automatically adjust to the direction of the viewer. The white-eyed dragon had already emerged from his sea of vital energy, and Lin felt extremely relaxed. It was time to pay attention to the summoning of Su Xiaolan's bloodline. The summoning power emanating from Su Xiaolan's body was extremely powerful, to the extent that it could even penetrate the barrier of the Taichu continent. Su Xiaolan looked at the boundless star map and sensed the call of her bloodline before pointing in a certain direction. Lin's pupils contracted slightly as he continued to adjust the star map. The direction that Su Xiaolan was pointing in was the southernmost part of the realm of stars. Could it be that the holy beast vermilion bird really was summoning her? Chapter 1900. Ms. Su Xiaolan, the direction you're heading in is where the vermilion bird tribe, one of the 4 secluded tribes of the realm of stars, is situated. They can be said to be the most arrogant tribe in the entire realm of stars. If you want to go there, you have to restrain your rage, Shui said with a grave expression. The most arrogant tribe? And Lin stroked his chin and nodded in agreement. He had experienced the arrogance of the vermilion bird tribe when he went to the southern heavenly wing nation last time. This was a tribe that looked down on everyone with their nostrils and looked down on everyone. It wasn't that they were targeting anyone, it was just that in their eyes, all of the tribes here were inferior. If you can't defeat the spirit of the vermilion bird tribe, then you're trash. If you can't defeat the spirit of the vermilion bird tribe, then you're still trash. In any case, you're trash. Is this a pain in the ass? However, this was the reality that Lin had encountered. That was the territory of the vermilion bird tribe, which had a relatively thin bloodline. If you were to go to the territory of the Vermilion bird tribe, which had the richest bloodline, then wouldn't they be so arrogant? All right, I'll keep a low profile. Su Xiaolan nodded obediently. Her Vermilion bird bloodline still had karma to settle, so this was the best time to resolve this karma. There's a very long distance to travel from the Dragon Sparrow tribe to the Vermilion bird tribe star system, and the cost of teleportation is unimaginable. We can teleport you to the Vermilion bird tribe's territory, but it may not be a smooth journey on your way back. Hence, you have to be mentally prepared, Bai Shui continued. And Lin nodded with a solemn expression. Patriarch Azure Dragon had saved his life on several occasions, so he was very fond of the Azure Dragon tribe. In reality, the Azure Dragon tribe was very understanding and adorable, but that didn't mean that the other three secluded tribes were easy to get along with, especially the Vermilion bird tribe. Even though Su Xiaolan and the Holy Vermilion bird tribe were quite close, it was still hard to say what would happen next. A smile appeared on Bai Shui's face upon seeing that both of them were a little nervous. You don't have to worry. If something does happen, the Holy Beast Vermilion bird should be a little wary of you. If it's not an extremely important matter, it probably won't try to harm you. Su Xiaolan hesitated momentarily before asking, how do you compare the Vermilion bird tribe to the Azure Dragon tribe? Bai Shui replied frankly, in terms of combat prowess, the Vermilion of the Vermilion bird tribe, we of the Vermilion bird tribe of the Vermilion tribe is equal. However, in Milion bird Vermilion Dragon Xiaolan, bird Vermilion of Vermilion have. The Dragon tribe Azure. Why is that? And Lin was astonished. Bai Shui smiled. All of the powerful beings of the Vermilion bird tribe have gone on vacation. They have an extremely strong sense of honor, but their collective sense of honor is extremely weak, so they won't risk their lives for a war. And Lin was enlightened upon hearing this. He didn't find the Vermilion bird tribe's contradictory personalities to be a problem. A forlorn expression appeared on Bai Shui's face. In terms of combat prowess, our Azure Dragon tribe used to have 2 gods of creation, while the Vermilion bird tribe only has 1. However, the clear origin dragon has fallen, and Patriarch Azure Dragon's holy birth has yet to be restored. The Holy Vermilion bird has yet to recover from its injuries, but its holy birth is complete, so the Vermilion bird tribe is the most powerful. So you're saying that the Holy Vermilion bird is even more powerful than the Azure Dragon? And Lin's expression became even more grave. He felt like he wouldn't have been able to withstand the Azure Dragon's final breath even if he unleashed his full power, but the Holy Vermilion bird was even more powerful than the Azure Dragon. Don't underestimate the holy beasts. Kuan Gu spoke with a scorching expression. On the surface, the 3 most powerful tribes in the realm of stars are the Spirit tribe, the Star tribe, and the Ancient tribe, but that's because we can't be bothered to compete with them. The true most powerful beings in the realm of stars are the 4 holy beasts. Aside from those freaks on the Tai Chu continent, Chiyu added. Kuan Gu choked upon hearing this, but he still continued. The Holy Vermilion bird has been severely wounded, but it has a complete holy birth, so it's definitely more powerful than the average god of creation. However, we don't know exactly how much more powerful it is. At the very least, none of us have seen the Vermilion bird unleash its full power. We've only seen the Vermilion bird wreak havoc on gods of creation. And Lin nodded. In summary, the Vermilion bird was very bad *SS, but no one knew exactly how bad *SS it was. Sigh, hopefully, the Vermilion bird could be a bit more friendly. Su Xiaolan had come here to express her gratitude, and she hoped that there wouldn't be any conflicts. Master Bai Shui, I have an urgent report. All of a sudden, a return to void stage winged dragon stumbled into the room. What happened? Bai Shui's expression shifted slightly. The ancient tribe army suddenly attacked Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's soulless star and slaughtered all of the living beings on the star. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo is enraged. The winged dragon yelled. Everyone instantly fell silent. What the hell? Bai Shui blinked in confusion. This was like 2 people fighting. When the situation was extremely tense, one of the people fighting suddenly hammered the strong man next to him. She couldn't understand what was going on. The soulless star is one of the 8 cultivation planets that heavenly monarch Bei Luo holds in high regard. Have the ancient tribe gone insane? How dare they attack the soulless star? Chiyu's eyes were as wide as saucers. What kind of vendetta do they have against each other? Kuingu clicked his tongue in wonder. The winged dragon replied with an excited expression, I don't know the specifics, but according to the information provided by the ancient tribe spies, this seems to have something to do with our battle on the ice pole star. His words fell. Chiyu, Shungjin, Bai Shui, and the 2 little azure dragons all turned toward Kuingu in unison. Kuingu was the most powerful general on the ice pole star, and he was completely dumbstruck. What does this have to do with me? A thoughtful expression appeared on Enlin's face. Could this be a misunderstanding? Kuingu's body shuddered as he also thought of this possibility. Haha, that's brilliant. So they mistook Mr. Enlin for a god of creation of the spirit tribe? Indeed, heavenly monarch Bei Luo likes to use humans as his essential body, and the power he can unleash in a human body is comparable to his own. Bai Shui's eyes lit up. I'm going to announce to the entire realm of stars right now that the Azure Dragon tribe is willing to stand with heavenly monarch Bei Luo in the fight against the ancient tribe. Chiyu chortled with glee. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They were such good friends, so of course they had to verify their identities. 2 hours later, heavenly monarch Bei Luo had just suffered an unexpected disaster when he received the Azure Dragon tribe's announcement to the entire realm of stars, and an enraged roar erupted throughout heaven and earth. Why is this happening? Extreme Down Monkey Monarch. Are you a F asterisk king stupid C asterisk and T? Azure Dragon Tribe, you screwed me over. Chapter 1901. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had somehow taken the blame for someone else. This was the most frustrating and infuriating experience he had ever experienced. The soulless star was suddenly ambushed and slaughtered. Furthermore, it was the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch himself, shattering the entire star and slaughtering over 1 billion living beings. This was a slap to the face. It was a blatant slap to heavenly monarch Bei Luo's face. After accomplishing this earth-shattering feat, the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch retreated to a star system and yelled at heavenly monarch Bei Luo with a vengeance. You killed my son on the ice pole star and defeated my ancient tribe army, so I'm going to destroy one of your planets today. If you're not convinced, then let's fight again. And then, heavenly monarch Bei Luo really did come. Extreme Dao Monkey King, you idiot, you don't even know that you've been used. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo was enraged, and his golden soul power surged forth to encompass the entire divine Emperor star. Idiot? How dare you call me an idiot? I'll kill you. The extreme Dao Monkey King roared in anger. The terrifying sound waves shook the sky as if they were going to explode. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's flesh crawled. This guy's comprehension ability was like this? That was why he looked down on the ancient desolate race. What kind of simple-minded people were they? You don't even know how to focus on the main point. At this moment, the Monkey King's fist had already arrived in front of him. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo cursed in his heart as he circulated his soul power to block the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch's fist. The extreme Dao Monkey Monarch's fists were imbued with extreme power, but heavenly monarch Bei Luo's soul power was nothing to scoff at either. As the two forces collided, a golden blue energy ring exploded in the starry sky. An earth-shattering battle broke out, just like that. As heavenly monarch Bei Luo fought, he explained that he hadn't done anything to the ice pole star. I'm still cultivating on my own planet, but the blame is already on me. No one would feel good about this. He had already thought of what to do. First, he would let the stupid monkey realize his mistake, and then he would violently beat the stupid monkey up. Only then would it be satisfying. However, the extreme Dao Monkey Monarch completely ignored heavenly monarch Bei Luo's explanation. I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. You're quibbling and shirking your responsibility. Do you think you can fool me like this? Do you really think I'm an idiot? The extreme Dao Monkey King roared as he fought. Heavenly Monarch Luo felt like throwing up a mouthful of blood. Originally, stupid C*T was just a word used to express one's emotions, but now he felt that there was nothing wrong with using it on the Monkey King. This battle lasted for an entire day. In the end, Heavenly Monarch Luo was lightly injured, and the extreme Down Monkey Monarch was severely injured. The extreme Down Monkey Monarch reluctantly believed Heavenly Monarch Luo's words and agreed to a truce. Actually, he had been beaten into submission. Ever since Heavenly Monarch Luo obtained the core power of the Spirit Patriarch, his power had increased drastically. Heavenly Monarch Ling was originally the most powerful of the 4 Heavenly Monarchs, but now he had to relinquish his position. Heavenly Monarch Luo sat on his throne with a frosty expression. Haha, truce? You destroyed one of my planets, and you want to let go? Dream on. Heavenly Monarch Luo was only trying to stall for time. He still had something very important to do, and that was to ferret out the mastermind behind the scenes. He could not stand this injustice. I'd like to see who has the guts to actually dare to provoke me. I don't care who they are. I'm going to teach them that the most powerful being of our spirit tribe, Heavenly Monarch Luo, is not someone they can mess with. The man harumphed coldly before slowly disappearing into the starry sky. At this moment, on a neighboring Dragon Horse star system, which was still under the control of the Azure Dragon tribe, there were a total of 5 planets orbiting this star. There was even one planet that could sustain life, and that was the Heavenly Cloud Star. The reason why it was named the Heavenly Cloud Star was because its land was a soft white, just like the clouds in the sky. During the day, due to the special structure of the rock and soil layer, it would emit a faint fluorescence after absorbing sunlight. From extremely far away, this planet was as beautiful as a pearl. The Heavenly Cloud Star was the core port of the Azure Dragon tribe, and it was also the core teleportation location. There were a total of 30,000 direct spatial teleportation channels. Lin and Su Xiaolan had also come to this planet, as they were going to the Vermilion Bird Territory. The teleportation to the Vermilion Bird Territory requires a large amount of energy, and it will take around 3 days. I'll have to trouble you to wait patiently during this time. Kuan-Gu twisted his massive body as he spoke in a respectful voice. Bai Shui and Qi Yu couldn't leave the Dragon Origin Star, so Kuan-Gu was in charge of the teleportation. No problem. Lin smiled. I'll just accompany Xiaolan for a stroll around this planet. Kuan-Gu looked at the two of them with a hint of envy in his eyes. They were a perfect couple, and they looked so harmonious as they stood hand in hand. What a perfect couple! And Lin and Su Xiaolan saw many different teleportation spell formations that flashed incessantly. There were Dragon Tribe cultivators arriving and departing, as well as beings of other tribes arriving and departing. He could even see a series of gargantuan dragons dragging boxes of unimaginably large cargo through space. This was one of the characteristics of this planet. And Lin held onto Su Xiaolan's soft, and delicate hand as they strolled around the planet, appreciating the scenery around them. Each planet had its own unique characteristics. The Ice Pole Star was pure and flawless, while the Dragon Origin Star was fraught with peril and despair, but it was also a spectacular sight to behold. As for the Heavenly Cloud Star, it gave off the feeling that it was a white, soft, and extremely busy planet. White and soft was the essence of this planet. Extremely busy was also the essence of the living beings on this planet. There were hundreds of millions of living beings on this planet, and all of them were porters. Apparently, this was one of the most respected porters in the entire realm of stars. There were even returned to Void Stage mighty figures who worked here, and they were very proud of it. There are so many teleportation spell formations here. I've never seen so many teleportation spell formations in my life. And Lin sighed with emotion as he looked at the flashing light and the spatial fluctuations emanating from the planet. The principle of space teleportation was to open up the closest stable chaotic passageway between 2 spatial coordinates, allowing things to be propelled by energy in the shortest possible distance and cross space. With a good chaotic passageway, Objects could even travel faster than the speed of light, which was much more convenient than return to void stage mighty figures, tearing open spatial passageways with their bare hands and having to evade the chaotic turbulence from time to time. To put it in perspective, this was the difference between a person walking on a mountain road and a person riding on a high-speed train. The two of them held hands as they traveled, experiencing the different cultures of different planets and enjoying the different magnificent sceneries. They had a great time. 3 days passed by in a flash. It was finally time to teleport to the Vermilion Bird Tribe territory. 3 moons hung high in the sky. The two of them were making their way back when they encountered a man in a black robe. A smile appeared on the man's face. "I've finally found you." Chapter 1902. Enlin and Su Xiaolan's footsteps faltered as they turned to look at the man up ahead with a hint of suspicion in their eyes. The man lifted his hat to reveal a head of long, beautiful blue hair that fell to his shoulders. His handsome face had a pair of pure and clear black eyes, and his skin was as translucent and pristine as jade. Enlin stared at him for a moment to find that he was a complete stranger, but at the same time, he was struck by a strange sense of familiarity. "Who are you?" Enlin asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Enlin and Su Xiaolan with a smile. A man and a woman, one at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage and the other at the Tao Integration Pinnacle stage. "I can't believe that my son died by your hands. If it weren't for the fact that I forcefully searched the souls of several Return to Void stage winged dragons, I wouldn't have been able to find out that you two were responsible for this." "What are you talking about?" Su Xiaolan was perplexed, and she had already placed a hand on her scabbard. The man chuckled before suddenly disappearing into the night sky. Enlin and Su Xiaolan both faltered upon seeing this. The night sky was littered with stars. 3 bright moons were situated in different directions in the night sky, casting down silvery white light. The cold moonlight shone down upon the earth. The surroundings became quiet. "He left." Su Xiaolan was a little perplexed. Enlin's expression was grave. "Don't get complacent. Our enemy is not to be underestimated. He was able to sneak up on us and even leave without us noticing. Even if he used some kind of mystic technique, he's still..." Before he had a chance to finish his sentence, a voice filled with boundless might erupted throughout the entire heavenly cloud star. "Enlin, Su Xiaolan, you two plotted to lure the ancient tribe into our spirit tribe territory and destroy our soulless star. Do you really think your plan was flawless? I'm going to kill you today. Remember my name? I am Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo." The voice was boundlessly powerful, and it shocked all living beings on the heavenly cloud star. "It's Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo." Su Xiaolan's expression shifted. She had naturally heard of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Aside from being the scapegoat, this Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had also slain Heavenly Monarch Shi Ling and plotted to kill the Spirit Patriarch. Enlin raised his head to look at the sky. He thought to himself, "We've already met before. What can't we say face to face?" Did he have to fly into the sky just to say something awesome in the sky? But soon, he felt that something was wrong. 3 bright moons hung high in the sky. However, one of the moons was getting bigger and bigger in his field of vision. Enlin's eyes widened as a very bad feeling welled up in his heart. "No, it can't be." Su Xiaolan was also shocked. She looked at the moon in the sky, which was getting bigger and bigger. The moon grew bigger and bigger in his field of vision. In the end, it covered half the sky. When it rubbed against the atmosphere, it ignited into flames like a meteor falling from the sky to destroy the world. Enlin looked up at the apocalyptic scene, and he took a deep breath. Did Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo F King throw the moon down from the sky? There were 3 moons of different sizes in the night sky of the heavenly cloud star. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had very considerately tossed the largest moon toward Enlin. That's right, the location where the moon was crashing down was exactly where Enlin was standing. The moon was also imbued with paramount soul power, thereby enhancing its power. If the entire moon were to fall, the entire heavenly cloud star would definitely be pulverized. All of the living beings on the heavenly cloud star panicked and fled for their lives, but they didn't know where to go. If the moon were to fall like that, was there any place on this planet that was safe? A small number of powerful beings could still fly and run, but most of the living beings that couldn't even fly had already collapsed to the ground, and some of them used teleportation spell formations to escape. Despair enshrouded the entire planet. Gu was originally quite elated to finally set up the teleportation spell formation, and he was just waiting for Enlin and Su Xiaolan to arrive. However, Enlin and Su Xiaolan didn't arrive. Instead, they were greeted by the sight of the moon. Holy F***CK? Why did Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo chase us all the way here? We're all going to die. Gu's expression was filled with despair. They had thought that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo would discover that Enlin was responsible for all of this, but they didn't think that he would come so quickly and in such a vicious manner. All of the living beings on the planet fell into despair. Never would they have thought that the moon that had hovered peacefully in the sky for so long would fall from the sky one day, and in such a vicious manner. There were also many return to Void Stage mighty figures who attacked the falling moon with all their might. However, the moon was enshrouded within a layer of extremely powerful soul power, and their attacks were unable to even break through the membrane around the moon. It's over. That was the only thought in everyone's mind. The moon fell too abruptly, and it didn't even have time to activate the spell formation around the planet. Enlin looked up at the scenes unfolding before him, and a song suddenly appeared in his mind. I want to pluck the stars for you. I want to pluck the moon for you. I want to pluck the sun for you. I want to give you everything you want. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was the first person to pluck the moon for him. His heart was filled with complex emotions. Enormous energy pressure descended. The moon hadn't even completely crashed into the ground, but the earth was already crumbling. Just as everyone was in complete despair, a crisp sword ringing erupted for tens of thousands of kilometers. A woman in a jade dress charged toward the falling moon without any hesitation, and her sword lashed out like a dragon. A blue lightning sword projection flashed through the sky for over 30,000 kilometers, as if it were a galactic dragon, instantly illuminating the entire planet. Su Xiaolan had sprung into action. She wielded her dragon sparrow sword, and there was no hint of fear on her face. Instead, there was a hint of excitement on her face as she slashed down viciously upon the falling moon. The extremely pure and profound lightning might was imbued with her paramount observation in the Tao of the true dragon, and it tore through the barrier around the moon. Then, with irresistible force, the entire moon was slashed by this azure lightning sword, slicing it into two like butter. Gu's eyes widened. It was sliced open. One had to realize that this was an attack imbued with the power of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. The gap between the Tao integration stage and the God of Creation stage was as massive as an insurmountable chasm. But Su Xiaolan was able to bridge this gap without using any external power. In the sky, the huge moon, which was burning with raging flames and bringing with it the power to destroy the world, was cut neatly into two halves. Lightning was still wreaking havoc on its surface. All of the living beings present were stunned by this sword projection. However, this was not the end. The kinetic energy imbued by the moon was far too terrifying, and it continued to plummet after being sliced in half, transforming into two doomsday meteorites. If they continued to fall like this, the heavenly cloud star would be doomed. Phew! A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as a hint of a smile appeared on her face. The dragon sparrow sword in her hand flipped through the air, and a dragon opened its eyes within the blade. Lightning dragon tear. Whoosh! Countless bolts of lightning suddenly extended from the incision like a spider web, enshrouding the two halves of the moon. The bolts of lightning were like countless sabers of light, instantly shattering the moon into countless pieces. Bam, bam, bam. A meteor shower instantly began to fall from the sky. Enlin waved a hand through the air upon seeing this, and a gust of wind blew for tens of thousands of kilometers, annihilating all of the debris. A scolding expression appeared on his face. Don't throw rocks everywhere. It's not good to hit any flowers or plants. Su Xiaolan turned with a smile. You're responsible for cleaning up after me. And Lin nodded. Every successful woman has a strong man silently supporting them. A thought seemed to have occurred to Su Xiaolan, and a blush appeared on her face. You're so naughty. Thus, the threat of the moon falling on the heavenly cloud star was resolved as the two of them conversed. Chapter 1903. The heavenly cloud star had only just fallen into despair when they discovered that the moon, which was powerful enough to crush them, had completely disappeared before their eyes. Which top-rate mighty figure had intervened? Many powerful beings finally turned toward a certain direction, where there were two petite figures. They were humans. Wait, since when had a human powerful enough to oppose heavenly monarch Bei Luo? Just as everyone was in shock and bewilderment, and Lin and Su Xiaolan had already risen into the sky toward heavenly monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo had wanted to toss a few more moons at Lin and Su Xiaolan, but he could only give up after seeing that they were already flying toward him. She's only at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, but she was able to break through my essential power with the power of a true dragon. Is this woman a human or a dragon? Does she have some powerful force backing her? Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's brows furrowed as a hint of wariness welled up in his heart. He looked at the white-robed man in the distance, and the wariness in his heart deepened. No matter how he looked at it, that be Astrostarred was only at the return to void pinnacle stage, but the power he was displaying was clearly not at the return to void stage. Strange. This was way too strange. Who are you? Heavenly monarch Bei Luo repressed his rage with a dark expression. He did want to exact revenge, but he wasn't an idiot who would just charge him without asking any questions. He preferred to study things thoroughly before making his move at lightning speed and settling the matter with a single strike. The power displayed by these two people was worthy of his caution. Then, a fist appeared in front of him. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo. Bam! An enormous power crashed down without any reservation. The space within a radius of several hundred kilometers was shattered by the residual power of the fist. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo was blasted flying for over 10,000 kilometers. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo gifted me a moon, and I'll return you a loving fist. Lin slowly withdrew his fist with a smile on his face. Over 10,000 kilometers away, Heavenly monarch Bei Luo stopped in his tracks and looked at Lin as he massaged his blushing cheeks. I was too careless. I had been paying close attention to Su Xiaolan this entire time, and I thought you were at the Tao integration pinnacle stage at most. That hurts. Lin's expression changed slightly. He had unleashed all of the power of his phenomenal success stage body of the war god in that punch. But his opponent was only slightly hurt? The other party's skin didn't even break, right? A true god of creation truly lived up to his reputation. And Lin pondered for a moment, then flew in another direction with a whoosh. Su Xiaolan hurriedly followed behind Lin. He trying to escape? Heavenly monarch Bei Luo stepped forward, and his body disappeared into the spatial ripples. In the next instant, he appeared behind Lin. In almost the blink of an eye, he had traversed a distance of 10,000 miles. You're very strong, but compared to me, you're just slightly bigger ants. If you don't tell me where you came from, don't blame me for killing you. A cold and ethereal voice reverberated through outer space. And Lin and Su Xiaolan had no intention of running away. On the contrary, they were looking forward to a battle. However, they didn't want to do it here. Instead, they wanted to do it on the neighboring heavenly cloud star, the Steel Mountain Star. After all, if they were to battle on the heavenly cloud star, what if the shock waves from their battle destroyed the teleportation spell formation and they couldn't get to the Vermilion Burr tribe territory? You want to know where I come from? All right, I'll tell you. And Lin immediately tried to stall for time. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's killing intent subsided slightly upon hearing this, but he still followed closely behind Lin. 1 minute later, are you going to F Astra's king tell me or not? Heavenly monarch Bei Luo flared up with rage. I'll tell you. And Lin flew forward as he spoke, We come from the most powerful sect in the Koinsu universe, the 4-9 Immortal sect. I'm a core disciple of the sect leader, and I'm telling you, if you hit me, my master will never let you off the hook. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this. He seemed to have heard this information from the other return to Void Stage winged dragons when he was searching for information about them. If what Enlin said was true, then a core disciple of the 4-9 Immortal sect was already this powerful. If he really did get on their bad side, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was hesitating. Enlin might not be telling the truth, but what if he was telling the truth? It was always better to be safe than sorry. These two powerful beings were both very unfamiliar to him. It was very strange for them to suddenly appear here. What if they really had come from an alternate universe to carry out some kind of mission? If he killed Enlin, would Enlin's master be enraged by this and descend upon the realm of stars before hanging him up and beating him up? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo became more and more nervous as he thought about this. Even though he was feeling very aggrieved, he felt like Enlin hadn't done this on purpose. This was a complete misunderstanding. He was a god of creation, a high and mighty spirit tribe heavenly monarch, so how could he not tolerate even a small mistake from Enlin? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo felt relieved. The extreme Tao Monkey Monarch was the one who deserved to die the most. If it weren't for the fact that the extreme Tao Monkey Monarch was too stupid and thought that he was Enlin, how could the soulless star have been massacred? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's mind was filled with many thoughts, and he even slowed down a little in his pursuit. Enlin continued with his threats. Don't doubt me. You can tell that my cultivation base is only at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. However, you know just how powerful I am, right? Do you think any sect in this small realm of stars would be able to nurture a freak like me? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo thought about it and realized that there really wasn't. Truth be told, there are 10,000 other powerful beings like me in my 4-9 Immortal sect. Enlin yelled as he unleashed his vacuum voice transmission technique. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body shuddered, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. Enlin patted Su Xiaolan's shoulder and added fuel to the fire. Even she is only my servant. She's at the Tao Integration Pinnacle stage, and even a god of creation can't crush her. What AF asterisk king disgrace. He had just added fuel to the fire, and he had been burned as well. Enlin felt a spasm in his waist, as if he had been electrocuted. He turned his head and saw that the green-clothed woman was glaring at him angrily, causing the words that he had spoken to turn cold. Enlin was dead, but Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was beyond astonished. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo really wanted to turn around and leave, but a thought suddenly flashed through his mind, and a bold idea occurred to him. Who was the pinnacle of the Tao? The path to the Tao was a place of both risk and opportunity. In this boundless realm of stars, God of creation births with holy births were the pinnacle of cultivation bases, and even he didn't know what to do next. However, if this man really did come from the 4-9 Immortal sect, then there was a very good chance that he possessed an inheritance beyond the God of creation stage. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's breathing accelerated. After killing Enlin, I'll search his soul and take all of his core inheritances. After that, I'll continue to cultivate, and I'll be the most powerful being in the realm of stars in the future. From the fact that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo dared to trap Heavenly Monarch Xiling and kill the Spirit Patriarch, it was clear that he was a very aggressive and adventurous being. As soon as he thought of this, he couldn't suppress it anymore. Enlin's inheritance, I really want it. Chapter 1904. Enlin's hair stood on end from Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's stare. Why did this be asterisk starred look like he was going to eat him? He had just used his trump card, and now there were F asterisk king side effects? Thankfully, they had already entered the range of the Steel Mountain Star. The Steel Mountain Star was an extremely hostile planet with almost no life forms. The daily temperature was close to 1,000 degrees, and the terrain was also very unique. There were tall mountains constructed from steel all over the planet, each of which was several thousand feet tall. There were also a series of scorching red rivers flowing through the mountains, all of which were formed from molten steel and possessed extremely terrifying temperatures. There's no need to worry about the flowers and plants here. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. He wasn't used to space battles, so land battles were more suitable for him. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had also detected Enlin's intentions, and he harumphed coldly. You're about to die, yet you still have the time to care about the lives of other living beings. You think you can kill me? Enlin chortled with glee as he clenched his fists and unleashed the power of his phenomenal success stage body of the war god before unleashing an almighty punch toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo spread open his hands, and a blue soul power crystal shield instantly materialized before him, which stacked on top of one another and reflected the starlight in the sky. Boom! The fist crashed into the soul power crystal shield, making it tremor slightly, but it didn't crack open. Do you think you can hurt me now that I'm on my guard? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo chuckled coldly as he pushed the crystal shield with one hand and gripped the air with his other hand. Boundless blue soul power materialized into a spear that was violently hurled toward Enlin. Star of Slaughter, Infinite Holy Soul Spear. The spear fell like a blue shooting star. Boundless killing intent seemed to be trying to congeal the surrounding space. Not only did Enlin sense an extremely powerful restrictive force, but he could also sense that he had been locked onto by an invisible force. This was a type of karma lock, and no matter where he hid, the spear would have to stab into his body. Otherwise, the spear wouldn't stop. This spear was the most powerful homing missile in the realm of stars. It's just a simple power of karma. As long as I'm powerful enough, there's no karma that can't be broken. Enlin unleashed another normal attack toward the spear. Boom! Just as the fist energy shot out, the spear actually disappeared without a trace. Enlin's complexion changed drastically. Just as he was about to turn around, the long spear behind him had already stabbed him in the back. Not only could this gun track, but it could also use extremely agile space jumps to avoid attacks. A piercing pain came from behind as the blue spear stabbed into Enlin's back, pushing Enlin forward. If it didn't pierce through Enlin's body, its power would never dissipate. After attaining the phenomenal success stage of the body of the war god, it already possessed a hint of eternity and immortality. Theoretically speaking, not only its strength, but even its defensive prowess had also reached an extremely fearsome level. However, a cry still sounded from behind him. This was a sign that his body was unable to withstand the ravaging power. Soul-type source power. Enlin gritted his teeth. His body was being pushed by the spear, and his skin was already showing signs of cracking. He was just about to unleash his power when a powerful aura suddenly swept toward him from up ahead. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had already appeared before him, and his index finger was imbued with extremely rich essential power as he pointed a finger toward Enlin. You're the one who killed all living beings on the soulless star, so you should die with them. Enlin was struck by an unprecedented sense of peril as Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's index finger drew closer and closer. At this moment, the cry of a dragon sparrow bird suddenly erupted from beside him. A woman in a jade dress flew through the air like an azure dragon. The woman wielded her dragon sparrow sword, with lightning roaring and scorching flames incinerating the air. She was even faster than Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's attack, and there was even an azure dragon imbued within her sword that crashed into Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's side, knocking him flying. Enlin took advantage of this opportunity to unleash the 7 holy flames within his body at the same time, which enveloped the blue spear behind him before incinerating it in a frenzy. Soon, the spear melted and evaporated within the boundless holy flames. The flesh on his back had also been punctured, but it didn't completely puncture his body. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's eyes narrowed upon seeing this. Is your defenses really that terrifying? I unleashed an attack with my complete essential power, but you only sustained a superficial wound. What kind of body is this? It clearly hasn't been nourished by essential power. However, My essential power is like bone gangrene that you won't be able to completely remove. Once the wound is torn open, it will spread through your entire body, destroying your organs and causing your entire body to rot to death. His voice had only just fallen when he saw the gash on Enlin's back heel at a rate discernible to the naked eye in the next second. His skin became smooth and smooth again. Heavenly Monarch Beiluo, holy F***CK? How did he recover so quickly? So be it if his defenses were immensely powerful, but his regenerative abilities were also immensely powerful. Not only that, but his essential power had also been erased by a certain power within Enlin's body. Heavenly Monarch Beiluo felt like he had underestimated his opponent again. Enlin cracked his neck from side to side with a smile on his face. His evergreen technique had already been perfected, and its life force was so powerful that even he was fearful of it. Power of the Spirit God, activate. Boom. Blue essential power suddenly erupted from Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's body, and his aura soared explosively once again as he hurtled toward Enlin at an extremely terrifying speed. This was a speed even faster than lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Enlin. He didn't unleash any more flashy techniques. Instead, he unleashed a mundane punch toward Enlin. Enlin was struck by a sense of extreme horror, but his battle intent surged explosively, and he instantly repressed this fear as he unleashed all of his power to unleash a punch toward Heavenly Monarch Beiluo. Bam! The clash of power was the simplest and most violent one. The power that had been condensed to the extreme even created a black hole at the center of their clash. Enlin felt an overwhelming power tearing through his entire body. This power targeted his body, his consciousness, his Tao, and all other types of energy. PFFF. Enlin felt as if all of his organs had been torn apart, and he threw up a mouthful of blood as his body plummeted toward the Steel Mountain Star at an extremely high speed, leaving a massive crater in the ground. How could the power of one's consciousness be this powerful? Enlin was astonished. He was sure that Heavenly Monarch Beiluo hadn't used any other power other than the power of his consciousness to attack Enlin's face. However, this attack was even more powerful than the infinite Holy Soul Spear that Heavenly Monarch Beiluo had hurled. The Great Tao was extremely simple, and it could be seen from this punch. It was a simple punch, but it wasn't targeted at anyone, but it was targeted at everything. It was effective against everything, and it was a fatal effect. Enlin was severely wounded by that punch, and he had only just crawled up from the ground when Heavenly Monarch Beiluo charged toward his face with all his might. F***CK off. Don't think that you're the only one who's good at melee combat. Enlin let loose an enraged roar, and a golden ring began to appear behind him, rotating relentlessly. He knew that his body alone would be unable to withstand his opponent's soul power attack. Hence, he decided to give himself a buff. 5 Elemental Body, activate. Chapter 1905. Enlin instantly entered his 5 Elemental Body, and his surroundings suddenly became clearer to him. Even the trajectory of Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's fists was instantly analyzed. The 5 Elemental Body was the evolved version of the 7 Holy Flames, and it contained the power of the 5 elements. However, in terms of explosive power, it was at least 5 times more powerful than the 7 Holy Flames. Enlin thrust his left palm forward and struck Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's fist with unerring accuracy. A terrifying power surged into his left palm, and his left arm instantly bulged as if it were about to explode from the immense power. However, the power of the 5 elements was activated, and it quickly engulfed the power of Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's fist like a bottomless abyss. What? Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's expression shifted. At this moment, Enlin's right palm had already struck Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's chin. The ring rotated, and the most powerful power of the 5 elements converged toward his palm. Bam! Heavenly Monarch Beiluo's chin was crushed. His entire body was sent spiraling into the sky by an indescribably terrifying power. Enlin stepped forward, and the steel ground caved in again from his power. He flew into the sky at an incredible speed and instantly appeared before Heavenly Monarch Luo, before launching a fist toward his head. "Don't get too cocky." Heavenly Monarch Luo's hair stood on end as his essential soul power erupted forth, and he made a divine seal with one hand before crashing down toward Enlin's heart like lightning. Spirit God, archaic seal. Enlin didn't evade, and his fist continued to strike Heavenly Monarch Luo's face, flattening his head. At the same time, Enlin's chest caved in from the pressure of the divine seal, and his heart was instantly pulverized. Bam! 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 Both of them were severely wounded as they flew through the air, crashing into several steel mountains in succession before finally coming to a halt. In the eyes of all living beings, these steel mountains were no different from normal mountains in the eyes of these two. In any case, they were like tofu that couldn't even withstand a collision. Hua! Heavenly Monarch Luo threw up a mouthful of spiritual power. His face had caved in like the bottom of a pot, and he had to slap his face vigorously to restore it to its original state. The golden halo behind Enlin rotated quickly, an extremely pure and profound power of the five elements surged through his entire body. The wounds on his chest and heart were completely healed in just a few seconds. Heavenly Monarch Luo's eyes narrowed upon seeing this. "Your body is even more fearsome than the extreme Dao monkey monarchs." He looked at the golden ring behind Enlin with a hint of apprehension in his eyes. He discovered that he was unable to decipher the mystery behind this golden ring. 5 different divine seals appeared in 5 different directions of the ring, releasing a frightening divine light. Heavenly Monarch Luo could sense that these 5 divine seals were interconnected, and they were imbued with the truth of the cycle of heaven and earth. There was a very special power surging over them, and it was as if no power could destroy the stable structure of this power. Heave to heave, Luo Monarch, Heavenly Lin, the divine and mental god, King Luo powerful, and Ming god, King Ming. That small vortex struck him with a sense of extreme peril. This technique shouldn't exist in this world. What a terrifying inheritance. Heavenly Monarch Luo was not fearful of Enlin's power. Instead, he became even more greedy. He was confident that he could crush Enlin and obtain Enlin's badass inheritance. Whoosh! Lightning revolved around Heavenly Monarch Luo's body, and he flashed toward Enlin like a bolt of lightning. His hands transformed into countless different forms, and he instantly unleashed over 10,000 punches toward Enlin. With his 5 elemental body activated, Enlin was able to instantly predict all of Heavenly Monarch Luo's attacks, and he was able to retaliate. Enlin also instantly unleashed over 10,000 attacks. His hands were as tough as the hardest metal, and his attacks were imbued with boundless power. Not only was he able to nullify Heavenly Monarch Luo's attacks to perfection, but he was also able to retaliate with all of his attacks. Boom, 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 boom. Enlin and Heavenly Monarch Luo's clash caused the Steel Mountain star to tremor violently, and all of the steel mountains within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers were flattened by the shockwaves from their clash. The two of them were like invincible bulldozers, flattening everything in their path. Heavenly Monarch Luo's soul essential power could destroy all things, including Enlin's body of the immortal war god. Enlin's 5 elemental body was a new power created by fusing the 5 elements, and it could also break through Heavenly Monarch Luo's essential power and wound his spirit body. Boom! Enlin's left chest was punctured in a moment of carelessness. Ha ha! Very good. He chortled with glee as he stabbed a finger toward Heavenly Monarch Luo's glabella, puncturing Heavenly Monarch Luo's temple. Heavenly Monarch Luo let loose a pained groan, and his body flew backward. Enlin was just about to give chase when he discovered that Heavenly Monarch Luo's leg had already lashed toward his waist like a whip. Boom! Enlin's body was smashed into the side, and he was sent flying for hundreds of thousands of meters. The shockwaves from that kick sent a blue soul power surging for over 10,000 kilometers, reducing hundreds of steel mountains in its path to dust. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo heaved a light sigh of relief at the sight of Enlin's disappearing figure. Before he had a chance to come to his senses, he heard a burst of raucous laughter reverberating beside his ears, and the space around him instantly twisted and cracked from the scorching heat. Up above, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo raised his head to discover Enlin looking down at him with a sinister smile on his face. His fist was imbued with 5 different colors, but the 5 colors suddenly transformed into an extremely rich crimson color. 5 elemental scorching god. The fist fell from the sky, and scorching temperatures even more terrifying than the sun erupted forth, incinerating everything around it into nothingness. Even Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body began to churn involuntarily. Boom! An extremely dazzling sun rose up on the steel mountain star. The steel earth turned into boiling molten steel, turning into a yellow and white ocean. Enlin, you have a death wish. The sea of molten steel exploded. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's bald head rose into the air before pouncing toward Enlin again. Enlin laughed heartily without any fear as he charged forward again. Their battle erupted once again, destroying everything around them. Enlin felt as if the blood in his entire body was boiling, and every single cell in his body was breathing with elation. His bones, flesh, and blood were unleashing their full power. That's right, he had unleashed all of his power, and there was someone who could withstand all of it. His body of the war god was very resistant, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body was also very resistant. His 5 elemental body was extremely violent, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's power of the spirit god was also extremely powerful. His regenerative abilities were extremely terrifying, and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's spirit body was also extremely powerful. Both of them were unleashing their full power from the get-go, but they were still evenly matched. Ha ha ha! This is awesome. Enlin chortled with glee, and each and every one of his fists was imbued with the power of a hydrogen bomb, creating a series of miniature suns. F*CK, you're a F*King maniac. An enraged expression appeared on Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's face as he kept Enlin's attacks at bay while retaliating with all his might. The God of Creation stage, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, was the ideal opponent for Enlin to test his own power against. This was an extremely satisfying battle for Enlin. Chapter 1906. Su Xiaolan stood high up in the sky and looked down at the battle taking place on the ground below. Violent energy swept her long black hair into the air, and her jade barley ink garment blossomed like an azure lotus in the sky. She had initially planned to assist Enlin, but she discovered that Enlin was having a great time, and if she were to rush over to assist him, she would most likely ruin Enlin's mood. It was a rare occasion that Enlin was having such a good time, so Su Xiaolan naturally wasn't going to do something like ruin his mood. She merely held her dragon sparrow sword and stood guard around the steel mountain star for Enlin. All living beings below the God of Creation stage were to be killed without mercy. Beep, beep, beep. Su Xiaolan's azure dragon jade pendant suddenly began to flash. This was her guardian deity token, and only guardian deities could communicate with one another. She accepted the jade pendant with a smile. Hello, what's up? Ms. Su Xiaolan, how's your battle with Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo? We've already sent 8 Dao integration stage true dragons to provide reinforcements. If worst comes to worst, you can self-detonate your identity as a guardian deity of the Azure Dragon tribe. Bai Shui's urgent voice sounded from the jade pendant. A surge of warmth welled up in Su Xiaolan's heart upon hearing this. Bai Shui knew that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was an extremely dangerous being, and no amount of reinforcements would be able to save him. However, she was still willing to send 8 top-rate reinforcements. She really did view her as family. Don't worry about us, big sister Bai Shui. Haven't you noticed that I'm talking to you in an unhurried manner? Su Xiaolan said. That's right. Bai Shui faltered slightly before asking, "What's your current situation?" Su Xiaolan was brimming with confidence. "Everything is under control. I don't even need to do anything, and Lin can take care of everything." Gasp! Bai Shui was astonished. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo possessed the power of the most powerful being in the spirit tribe. But Lin was able to oppose him on his own? Was there anyone in this world who could stop him? Perhaps only the holy beast in the sage position could suppress him. Bai Shui couldn't help but ask, "So you don't need reinforcements?" "No need," Su Xiaolan said. In reality, she didn't have much hope in a Dao integration stage true dragon. After witnessing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's true power, she felt like unless the guardian deity-level true dragons of the Azure Dragon tribe came to reinforce them, the rest of the true dragons wouldn't be able to do much. Not only would they be unable to help, but they would also be sacrificed for no reason. Su Xiaolan wasn't an emotionless and ruthless person. She couldn't bear to see her friends from the Azure Dragon clan die in this battle. "Sister Bai Shui, wait for our good news." Su Xiaolan smiled. "All right." Bai Shui heaved a faint sigh before instructing. "Be careful. All of the gods of creation will unleash unimaginably terrifying power in the face of dire straits." Su Xiaolan was well aware of this. Back when the clear origin dragon was in dire straits, he had tossed a great world toward Patriarch Azure Dragon. Even though Patriarch Azure Dragon had nullified that power, a weaker god of creation would most likely have been crushed to death in the face of that power. At this moment, on the heavenly cloud star, the hundreds of millions of living beings began to flee for their lives. They had seen Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo and the two powerful beings of the human race battle from the outskirts of the heavenly cloud star to the Steel Mountain Star, and they knew that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was a merciful and compassionate being. However, this didn't affect their decision to run away. What if the two of them ended up fighting their way back to the heavenly cloud star? This kind of top-level battle in the star field was not a joke. The aftermath of the battle was so terrifying that it was impossible to predict what would happen in the next second. One moment of enjoyment, but the whole family would be cremated. That's right, if they continued to spectate under these circumstances, they would lose their lives. Looking up from a heavenly cloud star, the Steel Mountain Star was normally a massive silvery gray. That was even larger than the average star. However, looking up from the distance now, the massive was flashing in a frenzy, and all of the living beings present were trembling with fear upon seeing this. This wasn't a blinking star. It felt like a star was about to explode. They knew that this was the result of a clash between God of Creation stage super mighty figures. Just how massive of a collision of energy would it have to be for them to be able to detect it from so far away? They didn't dare to think about it, nor did they dare to ask. All they could do was use the teleportation spell formation to escape from this terrifying star system. At this moment, on the Steel Mountain Star, this was a planet constructed from steel. The planet that had been extremely confident in its own body was now riddled with countless holes. The battle had already reached a climax. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's entire body was enshrouded in a boundless sea of soul power, and after taking Lin's punch head-on, a crazed expression appeared on his face as his spirit body swelled. He made a divine seal with his hands before pushing them toward Lin's lower abdomen like lightning, upon which his essential soul power surged forth. Spirit power, infinite penetration. Boom! The blue essential soul power pierced through Lin's lower abdomen before piercing through heaven and earth. And Lin couldn't help but throw up a mouthful of blood, and his body was hurtled through the air toward the steel ground. His body continued to sink, compress, and destroy. There seemed to be no end to the essential soul power in the air, and it crashed relentlessly into Lin's body, as if it were trying to pulverize Lin. 5 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers, and Lin was punctured by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's infinite penetration, and the scorching core of the Steel Mountain Star was also punctured before it continued to crash into him. 50,000 kilometers. 200,000 kilometers. Boom. And Lin's body flew out from the other end of the steel mountain star. Boundless blue soul power surged from both ends of the steel mountain star. From afar, it looked as if a long and thin blue needle had suddenly appeared in the silver-gray ball, piercing through the entire ball. That's right, the entire steel mountain star had been punctured by heavenly monarch Bei Luo. A massive hole had also been blasted into Lin's stomach, and most of his internal organs had been obliterated. If it weren't for the fact that his 5 elemental powers were able to resist the essential soul power, his body would have been completely obliterated by the terrifying soul power. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo panted heavily in the air. That attack had expended a lot of his soul power. He looked into the extremely far distance through the massive hole in the ground, and he was able to catch a glimpse of Lin, who was still alive and kicking. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's flesh crawled upon seeing this. Was this guy really that tough? Even the extreme Dao monkey monarch, who possessed an invincible body, would be severely wounded after taking that infinite penetration attack. And Lin flew around the star before finally arriving before heavenly monarch Bei Luo again. His lower abdomen had already healed during his flight. As expected of the most powerful being in the realm of stars, you were able to hurt me. And Lin spoke with a solemn expression. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo. Chapter 1907. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo felt like he had been humiliated. He looked at Lin and analyzed his condition. And Lin was also looking at heavenly monarch Bei Luo, and the golden halo behind him slowly rotated as 5 elemental divine light converged into the darkness. Both sides fell into a brief period of silence. Up in the sky, Su Xiaolan was silently spectating the battle, and she swallowed as her dragon sparrow sword hovered by her side, ready to assist Lin at a moment's notice. All of a sudden, 2 sharp sounds of space being torn apart erupted. Boom, boom, boom. 2 devastating clashes erupted. Lin and heavenly monarch Bei Luo clashed again. There wasn't much of a disparity between their powers. Regardless of whether it was in terms of speed, power, explosiveness, or regenerative abilities, they were evenly matched. Hence, this battle was very likely to become a battle of attrition. Boom, boom, boom. Each and every clash between the 2 of them was like the most terrifying nuclear explosion, making the steel mountain star tremor violently. If this was a battle taking place on Earth, Earth would have been reduced to rubble countless times already. 2 hours passed. The 2 of them were still engaged in a frenzied battle. And Lin swore that this was the longest battle he had ever fought in his entire life. He had initially scoffed at the legends of battles lasting several days and nights. How could anyone possibly fight for so long? Battles between cultivators were all unpredictable, and the slightest mistake could lead to eternal damnation. So no one was willing to fight a battle of attrition with you. It would be a dream to even fight for 2 hours, let alone several days and nights. However, he discovered that if things continued like this, they really were going to fight for several days and nights. This wasn't to say that they were weak. In reality, they could easily lose their heads if they weren't careful. However, even if they did lose their heads, they could quickly regenerate. And Lin had once exploded heavenly monarch Shiling's head, and the latter shuddered before using his essential soul power to create a new head. And Lin hadn't had his head exploded before. He didn't know if he would be able to survive if his head exploded, so he had to protect his head as a safety precaution. The 2 of them were still engaged in an intense battle. Before they knew it, a day had passed, and Lin had really fought for an entire day and night. As the golden disc spun, the power of the 5 elements continuously flowed into Lin's body, allowing Lin to fight like a perpetual motion machine. He could use his power to his heart's content and push through everything. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo could extract essential soul power from the boundless starry sky for his own use. His soul power was as boundless as an ocean, and not only could he use it to quickly regenerate his power, but he could also use it to recover from injuries. Both of their recovery abilities were so amazing that it made one's hair stand on end. Then, they fell into a strange stalemate. It was a stalemate that no living creature in the world could imagine. Each of their attacks could destroy heaven and earth, but they just couldn't kill each other. And Lin was quite annoyed by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's cockroach-like behavior. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was also quite annoyed by Lin's cockroach-like behavior. It had to be said that Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's control over his soul power really was top-notch. At the very least, it was more powerful than Lin's God of Creation stage consciousness. So Lin didn't unleash his own consciousness. Su Xiaolan was also given a fright by their stamina as she spectated from above. If she were in Lin's shoes, her body would have been completely depleted a long time ago. But these two were still able to fight. And Lin, is he really going to be all right? Her brows furrowed slightly with concern as she looked at Lin, who was becoming more and more exhilarated as the battle progressed. The more difficult it was to win, the more brutal the final battle would be. However, Lin didn't call on her for help, which was why she wasn't doing anything. Su Xiaolan knew that Lin wasn't a shameless person. If he really wasn't confident that he could defeat his opponent, Lin would definitely call on her. So what was Lin's trump card? Su Xiaolan's curiosity was piqued. She knew that Lin had a few trump cards up his sleeve, but none of them seemed to be as powerful as his 5-elemental body. By body-crushing fist, Lin launched a fist toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Boundless Spirit Realm. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo spread his hands open, and his blue soul power enshrouded the entire realm. He was then greeted by the sight of a projection of the Buzhou Mountain, which seemed to be able to crush the entire planet, crashing down mercilessly. Boom! Shockwaves swept forth for tens of thousands of kilometers. The Steel Mountain star tremored violently, and it was knocked away from its original planetary orbit. The entire Steel Mountain star had caved in. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had been flattened into a paper doll, and Lin rushed toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, and a golden eye appeared on his forehead. Invisible ripples proliferated through the air. Divine Plunder Technique. In that instant, Lin saw Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's Tao realm, as well as all of his cultivation methods, and even his essential power. Thankfully, his consciousness was of an extremely high rank. Otherwise, he would have exploded from the massive influx of information. I want your essential soul power. A scorching light appeared on Lin's face. As long as he could steal Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential soul power, he would be able to thrash his opponent even if he were a god of creation. The Divine Plunder Technique began to plunder Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential soul power. However, a surprise suddenly occurred at this moment. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo instantly sensed that something was amiss. Wasn't Lin trying to steal his essential soul power? This was something even more important than his life. He unleashed all of his power to resist Lin's Divine Plunder Technique, and a tug-of-war ensued. 3 seconds later, Lin's Divine Plunder Technique failed. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had already been flattened into a paper doll, but he was able to resist the Divine Plunder Technique with his own power. Lin faltered slightly upon seeing this. At this moment, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body reverted back to its original form, and soul power lightning revolved around one of his hands as he stabbed his other hand into Lin's chest. Essential Soul Ignition. A sinister smile appeared on Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's face, and boundless essential soul power flames erupted from the hand that had stabbed into Lin's chest in an attempt to incinerate his consciousness into ashes. So what if his body was powerful? If his consciousness was weak, he would be able to completely destroy his opponent's consciousness. However, before he had a chance to gloat over this, he discovered that his essential soul power had been forcibly repressed by Lin's 5-elemental soul power. How could this be? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was dumbstruck. Bam! Lin blasted Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's head with a single fist. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's body began to disappear. In the next second, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo appeared over 50 kilometers away with a dark expression on his face. His head had already returned to normal. Lin's expression remained unchanged, as if he was already used to his opponent's antics. The two of them didn't say anything as they clashed again. Boom, boom, boom. The battle erupted again. Before they knew it, they had already been battling for 2 days and 2 nights. Enlin and Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's battle was still very intense. They were both trying to find out what trump cards their opponent had up their sleeves. Both of them had unleashed many trump cards, but all of them were nullified by their opponent. Normal trump cards were no longer useful, and they were both waiting for their opponent to unleash a trump card before unleashing a trump card of their own. Finally, after an earth-shattering clash, both of them flew back at the same time. And Lin couldn't take it anymore. CKU. If you're not going to use your trump card, I'm going first. Chapter 1908. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's eyes widened. Ultimate technique? You still have an ultimate move? He had originally thought that this was the limit of Enlin's strength. After all, everyone had used their trump cards, and the next step was to compete in endurance. In the end, the other party actually shouted that he was going to use his ultimate move. Why are you so surprised? Stop pretending. I know you also have a unique skill. Stop hiding it, Enlin said coldly. Heavenly King Bei Luo, hide my ass. He had already used up all of his trump cards in the previous battle. If he really had an ultimate move, he would have used it long ago. Why would he hide it until now? Didn't they know that the longer it dragged on, the more variables there would be? You've been fighting for 2 days and 2 nights, yet you're still hiding your ultimate move? What are you thinking about? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was starting to panic. However, Enlin was even more panicked than him. This was Enlin's first time fighting a protracted battle. He didn't know if it was the right time to use his ultimate move. Were there any unspoken rules? If his ultimate move couldn't kill his opponent, would he be killed by his opponent's ultimate move? He panicked like a horse. Enlin took a deep breath, and a black divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. Authority of Metal, activate. A supreme godly aura began to spread. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted with shock. What kind of power is this? Why can I sense the aura of the supreme laws of nature from it? Enlin chuckled. You're quite knowledgeable. I am now the supreme master of all metals in the world. Do you know why I chose to fight on the Steel Mountain Star? Just because it can take a beating? A bad feeling welled up in Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's heart. The earth began to shake, and countless towering steel mountains began to tremble. No, to be more precise, the entire Steel Mountain Star began to shake violently. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. The main element of this planet is metal. So, everything on this planet can be used by me, because I am the king of metal. Boom, boom, boom. Countless pieces of steel rose into the sky from the ground below, before hurtling toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. With this scrap metal, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo couldn't even be bothered to look at the steel. One had to realize that he was able to puncture the Steel Mountain Star's core with a single strike. He waved his hand lightly at the incoming steel, wanting to shatter it. Whoosh! It sounded like something had been pierced. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's expression shifted drastically, and he was just about to retaliate. At this moment, several sharp blades of steel tore through Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's aura before mercilessly stabbing into his body. Boom! In the next moment, the steel was shattered by his soul power. However, this was only the beginning. Previously, there were only a few steel blades piercing towards him. Now there were dozens of them. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was astonished. You're able to fuse the star power of an entire planet into that steel. Every large star would give birth to its own energy. In the star field, this energy was called star force. The Steel Mountain Star naturally had its own star force. However, the star force was ethereal and uncertain. It was the supreme power of a star, and even contained the will of the universe. It was only responsible for maintaining the growth of the star, and couldn't be tamed at all. Not even the gods of creation. But now what did he see? Enlin was using his astral powers to deal with him. How could he be so freakish? As it turned out, the star force was quite powerful. At the very least, it had the power to break through his defenses. Enlin had only just discovered this. After unleashing his power of metal, he felt as if all of the matter on the entire planet was under his control. He didn't even need to summon metal from thin air. He could simply gather materials from the ground. In particular, after taking control of the entire planet, an extremely vast and unfathomable power lowered its noble head and submitted to him. That was the Star Force. This was the paramount power of metal, and it could even control the Star Force. The power of the heavenly gods was slightly more powerful than the Star Force, but that didn't mean that the Star Force was weaker. The Star Force had a very important characteristic, and that was that it was extremely vast. An entire star had been nurtured for countless years, and Enlil was well aware of just how vast and powerful the Star Force was. Several dozen steel spikes were shattered by Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's essential power. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was just about to attack Enlil when he discovered that several hundred spikes imbued with boundless power had appeared and were piercing toward his body in a merciless manner. It had multiplied by tenfold. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo let loose an enraged roar, and his blue soul power formed a realm of death around his body to shatter all of the spikes before pouncing toward Enlil. After that, he finally managed to shatter several hundred spikes. Tens of thousands of steel spikes imbued with rich star power had already swept toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo from all directions before crashing viciously toward the center. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Boom! The steel spikes imbued with specks of purple star power transformed Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo into a porcupine. However, in the next second, tens of thousands of steel spikes were all shattered by a burst of devastating power. Dying! Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo pounced toward Enlil at an extremely fast speed while unleashing an almighty fist. Enlil chuckled coldly as he unleashed a fist of his own. Boom! Terrifying energy erupted on the planet. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's heart jolted. Enlil had unleashed such a massive amount of star power from the Steel Mountain Star. But why was his combat prowess still the same? All of a sudden, he was struck by a feeling that something was amiss. Why were there 6 strange balls hovering around him? He could sense a very similar paramount aura of laws from these balls. Crap! He was just about to evade. One of the balls unleashed an unparalleled gravitational force to instantly immobilize him. Boom! Lightning suddenly exploded. Insanity ravaged his body. 7 types of holy flames, imbued with the power of laws, then set his body ablaze. Wind and snow enshrouded the entire area. A black poisonous needle stabbed into Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's chest, upon which the lethal poison erupted in an attempt to corrode his spirit body as well. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo finally let loose a wail of anguish before his body was inundated by the powers of the heavenly gods. Enlil stood proudly in midair, with a black halo revolving incessantly behind him, and a black metal divine halo hovered above his head. 6 small heavenly god balls revolved around him, releasing surging divine light, making him appear as if he were a heavenly god. 5 elemental body combined with the powers of the heavenly gods, as well as the power of the stars. What do you think of my trump card? Enlil received no response. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was too focused on howling with anguish to respond. Of course, he didn't expect to receive a response from Enlil. He was only trying to flex. Following the eruption of the powers of the heavenly gods, the monotonous environment of the Steel Mountain Star was instantly filled with many colors, even though these were all destructive colors. A blue figure rushed out of the explosions of the powers of the heavenly gods in an extremely disheveled manner. It was so fast that even Enlil's eyes couldn't follow it, and it had clearly used some kind of extremely costly mystic technique. You want to run? No way. Enlil stomped a foot onto the ground, and the entire Steel Mountain Star tremored slightly. Chapter 1909. The entire Steel Mountain Star was under Enlil's control. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was indeed escaping very quickly, covering a distance of several hundred kilometers in the blink of an eye. However, The distance that he had escaped to was less than 1% of the Steel Mountain Star's diameter. And the steel that the Steel Mountain Star extended out could instantly pierce a certain distance. What did this mean? This meant that the Steel Mountain Star could instantly pierce 200,000 miles. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo hadn't even escaped for a second before he discovered that several hundred steel spikes were hurtling toward him at an incredible speed. The tips of the spikes were glowing with a rich purple star power, and they were extremely sharp. If he didn't use his power to defend himself, his body would definitely be punctured. And in front of him, densely packed steel spikes had appeared out of nowhere. All of these spikes had been formed from the ground of the Steel Mountain Star. Countless steel spikes had appeared in the sky, on the ground, and in all directions. That's right, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had used a mystic technique to escape, but he was still surrounded by steel spikes. Furthermore, the amount of steel spikes this time was several hundred times that of the last pincer attack. There were several tens of billions of tons of steel imbued with star power, and anyone would fall into despair at the sight of this. This was truly a barricade between heaven and earth. Don't go, Brother Bei Luo. Let my Steel Mountain underling entertain you. Lin stood on the surface of the Steel Mountain Star with a calm expression, and his hands danced through the air as he unleashed his heavenly metal power to draw upon all of the power of the Steel Mountain Star to trap Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Come on, have a taste of our Steel Mountain Star specialty, Star Power Steel. He clapped his hands together, and boundless steel crashed toward Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo again. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared with rage as his essential soul power surged violently toward the star power steel up ahead. Scorching and pure blue soul power roared into the air like a dragon, tearing and melting all of the steel up ahead. However, the power of a dragon had an end, but there was no end to the steel. After all, this was an entire planet's worth of steel. If it were just normal steel, then that would be fine, but this was steel imbued with the star power of an entire planet, and Lin was frantically activating the steel on the ground to replenish what he had expended. The steel that had been destroyed only made up a third of the steel that had been replenished. The more Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo charged forward, the more despair he felt. He felt that there was a star in front of him waiting for him to collide with it. If it was an ordinary star, he could still smash it in half. However, the potential of this star had been activated by Lin, and it could use star power. This was F*King frustrating. He clearly just wanted to escape the range of the Steel Mountain Star, so that Lin couldn't borrow the power of the Steel Mountain Star. He didn't expect that even this simplest plan couldn't be realized. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo charged forward for a few seconds, and the star power steel up ahead had already piled up to over 10,000 meters thick. The steel behind and on either side of his astroshoal were also stabbing forward in a terrifying manner. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo let loose an enraged roar as his body was rapidly plummeted. Rumble. He was pressed into the ground. The steel earth suddenly caved in, causing him to sink deeper into the Steel Mountain Star. 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters, 1,000,000 meters, the absolute suppression of the steel made him sink deeper and deeper. The deeper he sank, the more steel there was, and the easier it was for the astral power to surround him. This was true despair. Boundless astral power surged violently in an attempt to crush and destroy Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was unable to escape from the star power steel in the past, and there was no way he could do so now. He was still being pressed down and continued to sink. His spirit body could not bear the burden and was instinctively trembling violently. 10,000 kilometers, 20,000 kilometers, 30,000 kilometers, 50,000 kilometers. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo had been pressed into the center of the planet. The center of the Steel Mountain Star was surrounded by a thick layer of star power steel that was over 100,000 kilometers under Lin's control. How was he supposed to break through? Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, I've used the power of an entire star to bury you, and that's a testament to your lofty status. I thought you had some kind of trump card up your sleeve, but you're far too disappointing. Now please die. Unlin's voice sounded from within the Steel Mountain star, and it was as if he were a god looking down upon this world. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared with rage and indignation. He was a paramount being of the spirit tribe, but he was being spoken to in such a tone. This was a blatant humiliation. Unlin stood on the surface of the Steel Mountain star, upon which a series of massive steel mountains extended into the clouds. His divine halo was also exuding a frosty divine light. He closed his eyes and sensed the pulse of the entire star before gripping the air with one hand. Starball crushing technique, steel funeral. The entire star tremored violently as his voice fell, and all of the steel began to compress inward. Just how terrifying was the power produced by such a massive amount of steel? It was impossible to calculate. On top of that, the steel was imbued with the astral power that had been nurtured by the entire star for countless years, which was the highest level of power in this universe. This is the power of a star that has unleashed all of its latent potential. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, can you handle it? Boom! The Steel Mountain star shuddered violently before returning to normal. And Lin's face was extremely pale and devoid of any color. That attack just then had expended far too much of his energy. His powers of the heavenly gods had only played a guiding role, but guiding such a gargantuan planet with such a vast amount of star power was still extremely taxing. What a surprising power! This level of power has far exceeded my imagination. It should be enough to kill Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, right? And Lin exhaled as he unleashed his power of the heavenly gods to try and sense Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's condition. In all honesty, his trump cards were only the power of the heavenly gods combined with the normal attacks of the Steel Mountain star. The ability to sense and control the star power was a completely unexpected bonus. This was an extremely bad *SS surprise, as it had completely unleashed the ferocious side of the star. The power of the heavenly gods had perfectly fused with the star. A thought suddenly appeared in Lin's mind. If he could take the Steel Mountain star back and use it as a weapon against the heavenly human tribe, wouldn't that be super bad *SS? Just as his imagination was running wild. Boom! The Steel Mountain star shuddered again. And Lin still didn't know what had happened. All of a sudden, a sense of peril welled up in his heart, and he quickly fled from the surface of the star. Rip! A streak of blue light that was as sharp as a heavenly blade released a soul power that struck fear into the hearts of onlookers, and it swept through the entire Steel Mountain star in a neat and tidy manner. It split the entire planet apart, and Lin's eyes widened in disbelief. Immediately afterward, a figure flew out from the planet. His entire body was burning with blood-colored origin soul power. And Lin, to actually make me burn my own natal divine soul. I, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo, am going to skin you alive, torment the divine soul for billions of years. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo's hair was disheveled, and blood flowed from all of his orifices as he flew into the sky at an extremely fast speed. And Lin's expression changed drastically. Was the other party crazy? Was he going to fight with his life on the line? He waited solemnly and was about to block it. He was then greeted by the sight of Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo flying in the opposite direction. The next time we meet will be your doomsday. I will definitely come back. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo roared as he fled into the distance at a speed that Lin was completely unable to keep up with. Lin was dumbstruck, and he didn't even know what to say as he stared at her disappearing figure. You're so *King powerful, even when you're fleeing? I'm already so feeble. Aren't you going to take this opportunity to *CK me up? Just as these thoughts were running through his mind, a ding-dong suddenly sounded from his system. Chapter 1910. And Lin had already given up on pursuing Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo. Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was simply too fast for him to catch up to. However, Heavenly Monarch Bei Luo was definitely not feeling very good either. From his enraged expression, it was quite clear that the mystic technique he had just unleashed had come at an extremely heavy price, and it wouldn't last for very long. Otherwise, he would definitely be chasing after Lin. Enlin looked on at the departing heavenly monarch Bei Luo when the system suddenly chimed. He turned toward the system to find that a mission had been completed. Super Divine Might Technique. Beat a God of Creation stage living being into submission. Mission completed. Now imparting the Super Divine Might Technique. Enlin, heavenly monarch Bei Luo, was quite fierce with his words, but he was actually quite honest. As long as he was convinced, it wasn't a disgrace. Boom! A buzzing sound erupted in Enlin's mind. A golden divine might suddenly proliferated forth, enshrouding the entire planet. Su Xiaolan ran over with a smile and was just about to offer words of congratulations when her legs suddenly gave out from under her. On the heavenly cloud star, some of the living beings that were planning to escape were still looking on at the battle taking place on the neighboring star with nervous expressions on their faces. Bursts of explosive energy erupted from the Steel Mountain star, which resembled a small silver jade plate, as if it were a bomb that was constantly flashing with red light. This battle had tormented them for 3 days and 3 nights, and they were constantly on tenterhooks in fear that a disaster would suddenly descend upon their heavenly cloud star. Soon, very soon, there were still tens of millions of living beings waiting in line, so it was going to be their turn very soon. All of the living beings in the realm of stars looked up at the flashing stars as they lined up nervously. It was nighttime now, and they could see the Steel Mountain star again. However, they were soon greeted by an extremely astonishing sight. It split open. Holy F***CK. How did the Steel Mountain star get split in half? A one-eyed octopus monster's eyes widened as it screamed. A dragon with a profound cultivation base used his watermelon-eating divine ability and captured a flash of blue light. Then, the star was completely split into 2. It was clear that the Steel Mountain star had been cut open by a force. It muttered in disbelief, "You must be joking. The essence of that star is steel, and it's extremely dense steel." Such a large steel star was actually cut in half. Many creatures were shocked and terrified. The Steel Mountain star was the most resolute planet in the surrounding realm of stars, yet it had still been sliced open. If they were to fight on the heavenly cloud star, they would most likely be blown up by those 2 monsters in just a few minutes. A commotion broke out around them. If it weren't for the fact that the powerful beings of the Azure Dragon tribe were maintaining order, the heavenly cloud star would have already descended into chaos. There wouldn't be so many living beings lining up obediently for teleportation. Haha, we won. We finally won. I have to tell Bai Shui and Qiyu about this as soon as possible. The most powerful being on the heavenly cloud star, Kuingu, twisted his body with elation, and he immediately dialed a voice transmission talisman to relay the good news. At this moment in outer space, heavenly monarch Bei Luo looked behind him with an extremely tense expression, and he heaved a sigh of relief after discovering that Enlin really wasn't able to catch up to him. The burning red essential soul power around his body began to dissipate, revealing his extremely withered spirit body. His spirit body was completely shriveled and lifeless, as if he were a dried-up corpse. "You forced me to burn half of my consciousness. D***M in it." Heavenly monarch Bei Luo's body trembled with rage. This mystic technique had damaged his Tao foundation, so there was no way he could recover to his original state no matter how much he cultivated. Not only that, but his severely wounded body would require countless years of nourishment before he could fully recover. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo had suffered a crushing defeat. Not only was his body severely wounded, but he also had to face the terrifying retaliation of the 4-9 immortal sect of the brilliant void universe. He was struck by a sense of immense pressure just thinking about that gargantuan being. He couldn't afford to mess with them. He had to find a place to hide. Heavenly monarch Bei Luo was very unwilling, but he had no choice but to accept his fate. He couldn't even defeat a single core disciple. So how was he supposed to fight the 4-9 immortal sect, which had at least 10,000 4-9 immortal sect disciples who were even more powerful than Enlin? In the face of such an invincible sect, he could only hide until they left the realm of stars or until they forgot about him. If 1,000 years wasn't enough, then he would hide for 10,000 years. If 10,000 years wasn't enough, then he would hide for 1,000,000 years. Heavenly Monarch Beiluo was already contemplating his plan of survival. Near the Steel Mountain Star, Su Xiaolan's legs had turned to jelly in the face of an extremely oppressive monarch's might. She was a super mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage who possessed the most regal vermilion bird bloodlines and true dragon bloodlines, but she was forced to bow her head in the face of Enlin's aura. This was an indication of just how terrifying Enlin's aura was. An apologetic expression immediately appeared on Enlin's face. I forgot to withdraw my aura just then. Sorry, being too bad *SS can be troublesome sometimes. Su Xiaolan opened her mouth to offer words of congratulations, but she gave up and rolled her eyes at Enlin. Su Xiaolan said, Heavenly Monarch Beiluo fled too quickly just then, and I wasn't able to stop him. What a pity. That's all right. If he dares to appear again, I'll hang him up and bash him. Enlin said in an indifferent voice. His voice was extremely calm and matter-of-fact. There was no hint of ferocity in his voice, but it was filled with peerlessly domineering pride, as if he were a monarch. Heavenly Monarch Beiluo was a god of creation, and a rather powerful one at that. Enlin wasn't confident that he could hang him up and bash him, but whether or not he could do it was one thing, and how he was going to say it was another. All right, don't pretend in front of me. I know my Enlin is the most powerful being in this world, Su Xiaolan snapped. It's a pity that the Steel Mountain Star has been destroyed. A forlorn expression appeared on Enlin's face. What do you want? Could it be that you want to take over this planet? Su Xiaolan was shocked. Of course. This is a very good weapon. However, my storage ring doesn't have that much space, so Little Na is probably the only one who can take this planet. Enlin stroked his chin with a thoughtful expression. The two of them rested for a while before returning to the Heavenly Cloud Star. On the Heavenly Cloud Star, all of the living beings around the teleportation spell formation wore expressions of awe and veneration upon seeing the two of them return. Some of them even lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at them. Haha, Senior Enlin, Sister Su Xiaolan, congratulations on defeating Heavenly Monarch Beiluo. You're both going to be renowned throughout the realm of stars. Kuan-gu ran over with a fawning expression. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had managed to force Heavenly Monarch Beiluo away, and he didn't appear to have sustained any injuries, which was quite astonishing. The Azure Dragon Tribe had made the right decision. You're far too kind, Kuan-gu. Let's hurry up and teleport Little Lon and I to the Vermilion Bird Tribe territory. Enlin smiled. Kuan-gu blinked with confusion. What did happiness have to do with teleportation? You're a god of creation who defeated the Spirit Tribe. You've achieved so much, so why don't you flex and bask in the glory? Of course, Kuan-gu wasn't going to say that out loud. Instead, he did his part and activated the teleportation spell formation that he had prepared in advance. Kuan-gu spoke with a serious expression. Please stand at the center of the teleportation spell formation, and I'll teleport you to the Vermilion Bird Tribe territory. Chapter 1911. Enlin held onto Su Xiaolan's hand as they stood at the center of the teleportation spell formation. This teleportation spell formation was extremely large, with a diameter of over 1 kilometer. There were also 99 white vital stones placed at the critical points of the spell formation. One vital stone was equivalent to 10,000 spirit stones. In other words, just the vital energy expenditure for this teleportation alone was close to 1,000,000 spirit stones, and this didn't even include the expenditure of other materials and preparations. The spell formation activated, and a vast spatial power surged. The 99 vital stones glowed with a brilliant light. Soon, Enlin felt a powerful spatial power enshroud his entire body as he hurtled toward another location. The scene before his eyes changed. It became a vast expanse of chaos. However, this wasn't chaos that was fraught with peril. Instead, it was chaos that was extremely stable, as if there was some kind of special power that had isolated the chaotic turbulence. So this is a high-speed spatial passageway? How extravagant, Su Xiaolan exclaimed. Enlin nodded in agreement. This high-speed passageway covered an astonishing distance. This was from the extreme east of the realm of stars to the extreme south of the realm of stars. And Lin didn't even dare to imagine just how far this distance was. However, the realm of stars was able to construct a stable spatial passageway between two locations. This was extremely impressive. And Lin, remember to keep a low profile when we get there. Don't cause too much trouble. Su Xiaolan thought to herself for a moment before reminding him. Xiaolan, do I look like the type of person to cause trouble? And Lin asked in a harmless voice. But you're not a person to cause trouble, Su Xiaolan replied. And Lin, all right, I promise you, I'll keep a low profile. He had to maintain the demeanor of a powerful cultivator and not be affected by external factors. In the extreme south of the realm of stars, within the core territory of the Vermilion Bird Tribe, Vermilion Bird Star System, the main star here was called the Vermilion Bird Star. It was tens of thousands of times larger than normal stars in the realm of stars, and it was also known as the brightest star in the realm of stars. Around the blazing giant star, there were 8 other stars that were burning nonstop, revolving in a specific orbit, forming the famous 9-star orbit system in the star field. In a 9-star system, there were hundreds of planets orbiting. In terms of scale, the Vermilion Bird Tribe's main star system was much larger than the Azure Dragon Tribe's main star system. However, there were only 3 planets that were truly suitable for life to flourish. Of course, these lands of peril were ideal places for Vermilion Bird Tribe living beings with high cultivation bases to train in. At this moment, on a fiery red planet that was not suitable for living beings to reproduce, the earth was scorching hot, and the air was twisted by the heat. On a fiery, sparkling mountain range, a large number of powerful creatures were working. These laborers came from all over the star field, including the Spirit Clan, the Star Clan, the Desolate Clan, the Dark Knight Clan, the Faint Snake Clan, and even the Human Clan. Not only that, but even the weakest of them were at the spirit nurturing stage, and there were even returned to void stage mighty figures among them. These living beings were all extremely powerful, but all of them were working hard without exception. They were all mining a kind of red crystal, or called flame crystal. This kind of crystal was planted deep in a mountain range, and even connected to the fiery red planet. It was extremely hard and laborious to dig it out. A spirit-nurturing stage living being would only be able to dig out 1 kilogram of crystal in a day. Even a return to void stage mighty figure would only be able to dig out a few thousand kilograms in a day. A series of vermilion bird living beings with extremely pure flame power supervised the laborers. All of the laborers had a target, and if they didn't meet their target, they would be burned to a crisp by them. These Vermilion Bird Tribe supervisors were extremely arrogant and domineering, as if they were the most regal beings in the world. They beat and scolded the laborers as they pleased, but the laborers didn't dare to speak up. All they could do was to silently mine for a living. Chirp, you idiot. Who said you could slack off? A vermilion bird with golden wings all over its body let out a strange cry. It opened its beak and breathed fire toward humans, but a man in a red robe suddenly caught on fire, and he howled in anguish. His face was twisted with pain, but there was a hint of excitement on it. He was burned for a long time before he finally managed to extinguish the flames on his back. Don't think that I won't burn you just because you're a return to void stage mighty figure. Living beings like you're all lowly beings in my eyes. The golden-winged vermilion bird raised its proud head to look down at the human it was burning. Its name was Huang Muzi, and it was a return to void stage supervisor who was responsible for punishing return to void stage miners who weren't working hard enough. An expression of humiliation appeared on the man's face. He had only looked up into the sky in a daze, only to be incinerated by the flames. What an unreasonable and violent supervisor. One day, he was going to cook this stupid C*NT bird and eat it. The red-robed man thought to himself as he carefully dug into the crystal mine with the power of the divine Tao with a special hoe in his hand. He was probably the most pitiful being in the realm of stars, right? A return to void stage mighty figure had been reduced to a miner. He wondered how Lin, Su Xiaolan, Shangwan Yi, and Yang Yuan were doing. That's right, he was Lin's friend, Mo Hai of the Vermilion Bird sect. Ever since he'd been sucked into this world by an inexplicable spatial power, he had been separated from his friends and landed in the territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe. He felt like he had been summoned here, as his ring represented the Vermilion Bird. Even though this ring had been snatched away by the Vermilion Bird tribe, Xiaolan still lent it to him for him to observe. To a certain extent, this was his opportunity. Sure enough, Mo Hai was warmly welcomed by the Vermilion Bird tribe. There were even some regal vermilion birds who transformed into beautiful women and danced for him. This was heaven. After that, the Vermilion Bird, one of the 4 holy beasts of the realm of stars, wanted to meet him in person. This was truly a great honor. Mo Hai could already envision himself receiving the true inheritance of the Vermilion Bird and becoming its most beloved disciple, thereby leading him to the pinnacle of his life. However, reality gave him a vicious slap to the face in the end. The Vermilion Bird suddenly sucked something out of his ring. Then it instantly changed its attitude and sent him to the flame crystal mine to be a laborer. Mo Hai was completely dumbstruck. What the hell was going on? Things had developed far too quickly and far too cruelly, and his heart instantly shattered into pieces. After a few failed attempts to escape, he could only accept his fate in despair and work as a miner in the mine. Tears streamed down Mo Hai's face as he hammered the crystal mine in front of him with a hoe. He had cultivated arduously for several hundred years, only to be forced to work as a miner in the Flame Crystal Mountain Range. What the F***CK was going on? With this in mind, Mo Hai was a little dazed again. At this moment, a burst of scorching and pure flames suddenly exploded on his butt. Boom! Ah! Mo Hai was on fire again. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get to work, you stupid C***T. Huang Muzi roared with rage. Mo Hai's body was on fire, but he didn't try to extinguish the flames. It was as if he was wholeheartedly accepting his punishment. Huang Muzi was quite pleased with his attitude. However, if Huang Muzi could see the expression of enjoyment on Mo Hai's face, he most likely wouldn't think this way. Oh! Mo Hai moaned in both pain and pleasure. This was the only benefit he received from being sent here as a laborer, so he had to cherish it. Chapter 1912. Mo Hai had the ability to sense the true intent of the Tao of fire from other people's flames. The more others burned him, the more he was able to glean something from it. The higher the level of the flames, the more elated he was. The flames of the Vermilion Bird tribe powerful beings were extremely pure, and this was an excellent opportunity for him to improve his Tao of fire. Hence, Mo Hai was quite fond of this irascible manager who would burn people at the slightest provocation. Mo Hai didn't use his ability to extinguish the flames when he was being burned. Instead, he allowed the flames to extinguish on their own. Huang Muzi was quite fond of him for his sincerity. This was probably a win-win situation. Mo Hai continued to mine diligently. Whenever he wanted to feel good, he would intentionally make mistakes. Then, Huang Muzi would burn him in a fit of rage. Thus, he would become content and continue to mine. This was a virtuous cycle. However, gradually a few days passed. Mo Hai discovered that something was amiss. He discovered that Huang Muzi wouldn't burn him when he made mistakes. This made him feel very strange. Mo Hai was quite perplexed. There was one time when Huang Muzi was looking at him, and he intentionally looked up into the sky in a daze. Huang Muzi took a glance at him before silently averting his gaze and turning to the others. Mo Hai, why didn't he burn him? Could it be that Huang Muzi had discovered something? Was this *TCH going to take away his only hobby? Supervisor Huang Muzi, I'm sorry. I got distracted again. Mo Hai suddenly yelled. Huang Muzi faltered slightly upon hearing this, and he turned to Mo Hai with a dumbstruck expression. Mo Hai was quite pleased with himself. If you don't take the initiative to discover my mistakes, then I'll expose my own mistakes. You're going to burn me now, right? Otherwise, what will all the other return to void stage miners think? Huang Muzi was struck by a sense of absurdity. He didn't take the initiative to burn him, but he was begging him to do so? He stared blankly at Mo Hai with a hint of disdain before a hint of sympathy appeared in his eyes. Mo Hai, I know there's something wrong with your brain, and you often make mistakes. However, your attitude toward admitting your mistakes is the best among all the minors I've ever seen. When you were being burned by my divine flame, not only did you not try to extinguish the flames, you were even able to force a smile on your face, even in the face of extreme pain. Mo Hai was dumbstruck. He forced a smile on his face. He was just feeling so good that he couldn't help but hold it in. Huang Muzi heaved a faint sigh. Truth be told, I've been touched by your spirit. Although your bloodline is despicable, your brain is a little problematic, and you are a little silly, your dedicated work attitude, and your precious spirit of smiling despite being subjected to inhuman punishment are worthy of my protection. I even want to recommend you to be the representative of the miners. A model miner. Mo Hai's eyes widened with incredulity as he stared at Huang Muzi. Are you surprised? Don't be nervous. This is the treatment you deserve, Huang Muzi said in a gentle voice. Mo Hai, idiot! What? Huang Muzi's eyes widened, and he flared up with rage a few seconds later. You're courting death. Rumble. Huang Muzi spat out scorching divine flames toward the insolent man before him. Mo Hai screamed in the flames. Mo Hai was satisfied. Sure enough, such days were the most fulfilling days. Everything else was fake. Huang Muzi only left after torturing Mo Hai for a while. Oof. Lowly human, if it weren't for the fact that you still have some value to me, you would have died a long time ago. Reflect on yourself. Mo Hai lay on the ground with a glazed expression and panting heavily. He was currently in sage mode, which was a desireless state, so he was thinking about many things. Even though his current life wasn't bad, he really didn't want to waste any more time here in this life or death situation. He wanted to return to the sect and fight alongside the disciples and elders of the sect. But even though I want to leave, I can't. Mo Hai sighed with resignation. I'm facing one of the 4 secluded tribes of the realm of stars, the Vermilion Bird Tribe. They won't allow laborers to leave this planet. Mo Hai was struck by despair at the thought of the Vermilion Bird Tribe. Even the Vermilion Bird Sect, which he was so proud of, couldn't compare to such a colossus. Aside from Su Xiaolan and Enlin, the Vermilion Bird Sect only had 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, which was already very impressive on the Taichu continent. But here, there were several dozen Dao integration stage Vermilion birds. Even all of the Dao integration stage super mighty figures in the human race couldn't compare to the Vermilion Bird Tribe. Not only that, but the Vermilion Bird Tribe even had a god of creation with a holy birth. How could someone like Mo Hai challenge a power of this caliber? Even a god of creation wouldn't be able to save him. Who can save me? No one can save me. Mo Hai lay on the ground and stared blankly up at the sky. He was suddenly struck by a sense of fragrant aroma. At this moment, a muscular man with a buzz cut walked over with a share of flame crystals. He was going to grab a meal, and he patted Mo Hai's shoulder with a smile when he saw Mo Hai lying lifelessly on the ground. Brother, don't think too much about other things. The Vermilion Bird Tribe is too invincible, and we can't resist them. Don't think too much about these things. We'll be free after 10,000 years of mining. It'll be very fast. More tears streamed down Mo Hai's face. Mining for 10,000 years. How the F *CK was that going to end? The muscular man extended a hand. In the boundless realm of stars, our human race is still too weak compared to the Vermilion Bird Tribe, so we should help each other. My name is Enlightened Daoji. How should I address you, fellow cultivator? Mo Hai looked at the muscular man's ferocious face, and he really couldn't associate him with the name Daoji. However, he still extended a hand. Hello, my name is Mo Hai. Daoji looked at Mo Hai with a benevolent expression. Even though Mo Hai was a little retarded, he was still favored by Huang Muzi. If he could make good use of this relationship, his future mining career would be much easier. Just as he was thinking about this, boom, 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 the earth suddenly began to tremor. A dazzling light suddenly erupted from a massive spell formation. This is... Emohai looked toward a certain direction. It's a teleportation spell formation. More living beings are coming, Daoji exclaimed. All the miners turned their gazes toward the teleportation spell formation. There was either sympathy or schadenfreude on their faces. All the living beings that were teleported to the Red Sparrow planet were classified as first-class workers, second-class visitors, and third-class travelers. However, regardless of which category they belonged to, there was a very high probability that they would be left here to work as miners after the matter was over. It was a nice way of saying that they would have a friendly exchange. After all, they had come and gone. Since this place was being used by living beings, the living beings naturally had to repay them in some way. Emohai was also looking on, and his heart was filled with worry. Who would be the unlucky one this time? Chapter 19:13. 3 vermilion bird tribe cultivators with powerful auras had already gathered near the spell formation. Among them was Huang Muzi. They were all supreme beings of the return to void stage, so they had no problem dealing with ordinary visitors. I wonder what rank of being it is. Judging from the powerful energy fluctuations from the spell formation, it should be quite extraordinary. A vermilion bird with blue flames burning all over its body said indifferently. No matter where it comes from or who its backing is, it's not as powerful as our vermilion bird tribe. If it doesn't understand humility and doesn't know how to work, then no matter who it is, I can make it work as a miner on the red vermilion bird planet. A vermilion bird with rainbow-colored feathers raised its head proudly. That's right, no matter what the other party's background was, it wasn't as powerful as theirs. I hope it's a supreme being of the return to void stage. The rate at which the flame crystals are being mined is still too slow, and we're still lacking in manpower, Huang Muzi said expectantly. The 3 supreme beings of the return to void stage were discussing fervently. There were also many vermilion bird tribe cultivators observing from the sidelines. The miners in the distance were also sneaking glances at them, including Emohai. A brilliant light flashed. 2 figures finally appeared under everyone's expectant gazes. Emohai's breathing almost stopped as his eyes widened in shock when he saw the faces of the 2 people. The white-robed male had a handsome appearance, and his clear eyes were constantly surveying his surroundings as if he was a curious child who had come to a new and interesting place to explore. The azure-robed female was so beautiful that she didn't seem like a mortal being. She had an extremely noble and holy disposition, and when she arrived at this place, her bright eyes blinked lightly. There was also a hint of familiarity on her curious face. It's actually 2 humans. The rainbow-colored vermilion bird's heart jumped slightly. That's strange. Why can't I sense their cultivation bases? Are they using some special mystic technique to conceal their cultivation bases? Huang Muzi asked curiously. The other members of the vermilion bird tribe could still maintain their composure. However, all the human miners were dumbstruck. To be more precise, they were stunned by her beauty. The appearance of that unfamiliar female had them completely stunned, and they couldn't take their eyes off her. Was there really such a beautiful woman in this world? Holy F***CK, that celestial maiden, Daoji, must protect her. The brawny man muttered with a scorching gaze. Emohai couldn't help but glance at the brawny man. You want to protect her? She could easily kill you with a wave of her sword. But very quickly, a worried expression appeared on Emohai's face. Why hadn't Lin and Su Xiaolan also come here? Although they were very powerful, they were facing the even more powerful and terrifying vermilion bird tribe. If they didn't run now, they would be dragged to become miners. Yes, the ones who had descended on the Red Sparrow planet were in Lin and Su Xiaolan. Is this the territory of the vermilion bird tribe? What a dense fire energy. Su Xiaolan exclaimed in surprise. She held onto Lin's hand again and said with a smile, "Let's have a good stroll." The sight of the cyan-clothed woman taking the initiative to hold hands made countless human miners feel as if they could hear the sound of their own hearts breaking. There was no justice in this world. How could such an ordinary-looking man obtain the admiration of such a top-notch fairy? In such a vile place, only living beings with decent cultivation bases can stroll around. And Lin chuckled. He looked around and said, "Speaking of which, it seems like we're quite popular here." The three returned to Void Stage vermilion birds had already surrounded Lin and Su Xiaolan. Scorching flames that were capable of warping the void around them surged around their bodies, and there was a malicious smile on their faces. "My name is Ing Kai, and I'm the supervisor of the miners on the Red Sparrow planet. Tell me honestly, why have you come to the vermilion bird's territory?" The vermilion bird with colorful feathers spoke in a cold yet pleasant voice. "Hello, Ms. Ing Kai. I'm Su Xiaolan, and this is my Dao partner, Lin. We've come here to pay our respects to the venerable holy vermilion bird beast." Su Xiaolan seemed to be completely unfazed by Ing Kai's cold tone, and she still replied politely, "Impudent! How dare you?" The three returned to Void Stage vermilion birds roared in rage at the same time. Huang Muzi's entire body trembled with rage. "How dare you address the Great Empress Vermilion Bird by her name? You have to address her as Great Empress Vermilion Bird," Ing Kai screeched. "This is no longer a matter of whether we address her as Great Empress Vermilion Bird or not. They've already offended the Great Empress Vermilion Bird, so we have to punish them by making them mine here for 10,000 years." The vermilion bird, whose entire body was covered in blue flames, spoke in a sinister voice. Su Xiaolan and Mo Hai paced around anxiously in the distance. Indeed, things had progressed in the worst direction. What would he do? Should he immediately run over and persuade them? At this moment, the expressions of the two people in the center of the spell formation shifted. "We have to keep a low profile. We have to be kind of birds." Lin and Su Xiaolan both recalled their previous agreement. "We're sorry. We were indeed too rash and accidentally offended the Great Empress Vermilion Bird. However, we really do have an extremely important matter that we wish to discuss with the Great Empress Vermilion Bird. Please go and notify her." Su Xiaolan squeezed out a smile. "Hee, do you think the Great Empress Vermilion Bird is someone you can meet just because you want to?" Ing Kai chuckled coldly. A mocking smile appeared on Huang Muzi's face. Humans are always full of themselves and think that they're very important. They think that they have the right to speak with Great Empress Vermilion Bird on equal terms. The last person is stupid, as he was already a minor. Mo Hai's face convulsed slightly. "Is he talking about me?" And Lin looked at Huang Muzi, whose nose was about to flip into the sky. He, who wasn't inferior to anyone, suddenly felt like stewing bird meat. When had he ever been bossed around by a trash of the Return of Void Stage? "Calm down. I have to calm down. I have to keep a low profile and avoid conflict. They were here to settle their karma, not to fight. Then, what do we have to do to meet the Great Empress Vermilion Bird?" Su Xiaolan asked in a gentle voice as she repressed her rage. "Tell us in detail why you're looking for the Great Empress Vermilion Bird." Huang Muzi raised his head and glared at Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan was a little hesitant. If you're not going to tell us, then you're going to stay here in mine." Ing Kai yelled. "All right." Su Xiaolan gave in. "We're actually here because my bloodline has sensed the call of the vermilion bird." "Call of the vermilion bird?" Huang Muzi's voice faltered. The other vermilion bird tribe living beings also fell silent. All of a sudden, raucous laughter sounded. "Ha ha! Did I hear that right? A human is saying that his bloodline has been summoned by the Great Empress Vermilion Bird? Even if you possess a trace of our tribe's noble bloodline, how can a mixed blood like you have the right to be summoned by the Great Empress Vermilion Bird? It's your honor to be able to come here to the Red Vermilion Bird planet. Yet you're actually trying to use such a clumsy lie to see the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's true appearance. Ha ha! How hilarious! This ignorant and stupid woman has made me laugh today. Wah! What AB asterisk TCH? Let's send her to the mines." All the vermilion bird living beings roared with laughter as they ridiculed Su Xiaolan. At this moment, Lin's expression had already completely darkened. Chapter 19:14. Lin originally wanted to calm down, but these birds didn't know what was good for them. They actually dared to scold Xiaolan in front of him. How could he tolerate this? What's wrong? Are you upset? Huang Muzi couldn't help but chuckle coldly at the sight of Lin's darkening expression, and he said, "No matter how angry you are, you have to endure it. You should know what our vermilion bird tribe is like. We're not something you humans can afford to mess with. Tui trash." Huang Muzi blasted a mouthful of flames onto Lin's face. Lin used his Qi Jin to shake it off in time. Huang Muzi's expression changed slightly, and he immediately flared up with rage. "All right, how dare you refuse to accept my flame punishment? Haven't you realized your mistake?" Pfft. Huang Muzi blasted another mouthful of scorching divine flames toward Lin's face. Rumble. The energy exploded. "Lin," Su Xiaolan exclaimed. The flames dispersed. Lin was still standing in the same place. His face was burnt black, and his hair was curled up. Su Xiaolan's eyes widened when she saw Lin's expression. Why didn't you block it? Even if he didn't block it, he shouldn't have been burned to this state. Let alone Huang Muzi. Even a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure wouldn't be able to inflict so much as a scratch on Lin, even if he were to lay on the ground and allow them to pummel him. In an instant, Su Xiaolan understood Lin's intentions. Was he pretending to be pitiful? Lin stood still with a pained expression on his face. His eyes were red as he asked with grievance, "How is it? Are you satisfied now that you've tortured me like this? Can you take us to see Great Empress Vermilion Bird now?" Kai let out a melodious laughter and spat out another flame at Lin. The rainbow-colored divine flames engulfed Lin's body. The groan of the man after being burned came from inside, as if a tough man had no choice but to succumb to extreme pain, causing Kai's entire body to feel comfortable. He. Take you to see Great Empress Vermilion Bird? What joke. In the past, only Great Empress Vermilion Bird has requested to see others. When has anyone ever requested to see Great Empress Vermilion Bird? Kai chuckled. Even the four holy beasts don't have the right to meet the Great Empress Vermilion Bird unless she invites them. How could lowly and insignificant beings like you have the right to meet her? A look of disdain appeared on Huang Muzi's face as he spat another ball of flames at Lin. However, this time, the flames suddenly scattered in midair. Huang Muzi faltered slightly before turning to look at the azure-robed woman beside him. He could see that there were still residual vital energy fluctuations in her hand. You actually blocked the attack for him? Burn her. This bitch is itching for a beating. Let's burn her. Kai waved her wings and shouted. Stop acting. Su Xiaolan bit down on her lower lip. Even if you're acting, I don't want to see you being bullied like this. And Lin looked at the azure-robed woman and sighed upon seeing the aggrieved expression on her exquisitely beautiful face. I also don't want you to be scolded by these trash. I've always disliked these Beastra's starts, but since you've said so, why? What are you saying? Obediently accept our punishment. Kai screeched and spat out a ball of flames that surged towards Su Xiaolan. The flames had only just spat out when a pair of hands viciously pressed down on her body. Kai was struck by a sense of terror, and she screamed in terror. Then a massive palm print appeared on her body, and her bones and flesh ruptured as she was ruthlessly smashed into the ground. Boom! The terrifying shockwaves caused the surrounding earth to tremor violently. Stop talking so much. I wanted to teach you a lesson for a long time. How dare you scold my Xiaolan? Lin spoke in a cold voice as he stomped down on the half-dead Kai's head. Gasp! All of the Vermilion Bird Tribe members and miners were astonished. That human insta-kill to return to Void Stage Vermilion Bird? How dare you attack the foreman? You're courting death. I'll kill you. Huang Muzi flared up with rage as he pounced toward Lin. Boom! A massive vital energy hand crashed down. Huang Muzi was flattened into the ground, and his body was pulverized. Lin spoke in a cold voice. How dare you speak to me like that? Those who offend the Vermilion Bird Tribe shall die. The return to Void Stage Vermilion Bird with dark blue flames burning all over its body spread its wings and unleashed a vast power of the divine Dao that swept through a radius of over 50 kilometers. Dao Ji's expression shifted slightly upon seeing this. Such a powerful aura. This vermilion bird is a top-notch mighty being at the return to void pinnacle stage. Boom! And Lin delivered another slap to the face. The power of the dark blue flames of the divine Tao was instantly reduced to ashes. The vermilion bird was flattened into the ground. It was unknown whether it was dead or alive. Daoji drew a sharp intake of breath. He hadn't even recovered from his shock, and this white-robed male had already crippled the vermilion bird. The three return-to-void-stage vermilion birds were completely defenseless, and they were all flattened into the ground by that male's palm. No wonder this male dared to attack. He's definitely the most powerful cultivator in our human tribe. He's a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure. Dao Ji came to a sudden realization. No wonder he was admired by such a beautiful celestial maiden. However, he soon shook his head in disappointment again. What a pity. So what if he's a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure? In a territory of the Vermilion Bird tribe, there are a bunch of powerful Dao integration stage, super mighty figures like him. It's great that he's acting up for his beauty now, but the vengeance of the Vermilion Bird tribe will definitely be far more terrifying than he can imagine. He's definitely going to die here. Sigh. What a fool. Daoji shook his head in disappointment. He then turned to look at the peerlessly beautiful woman in a jade dress and sighed with emotion. It's just a pity that such a woman is also going to die here. Sure enough, the other vermilion birds were stunned to the spot. However, their anger and resentment had yet to dissipate. Although the miners were shocked by Lin's battle prowess, the sympathy in their eyes was even more pronounced. Evidently, they also thought that Lin and the others wouldn't be able to survive for much longer. Lin, Su Xiaolan, don't stay here. Hurry up and run. Why are you so weak? It's still not too late to run now. A man in a red robe that had been burned into tatters suddenly yelled. Daoji was stunned as he looked at this cheap brother he had just gotten to know. Mo Hai was actually acquainted with those two cultivators who had caused trouble. Daoji was momentarily dazed. Then, using his quick-witted brain, he immediately sentenced Mo Hai to death. It would have been fine if Mo Hai hadn't stepped forward. Now that he had stepped forward, didn't he become Lin and Su Xiaolan's companion? Would the Vermilion Bird tribe let him go? Obviously not. A dumb C asterisk in T is a dumb C asterisk in T. Why did I choose to befriend him in the first place? Wait, befriend him? It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck Dao Ji's mind, causing him to freeze on the spot. Fuck. He had just made friends with Mo Hai. There were other miners on the field who saw it. If that's the case, won't I be implicated as well? Chapter 19:15. Dao Ji, who is 8 feet tall, had tears in his eyes. His stupid actions just now had completely ruined his future. Was he going to die with these idiots? And Lin and Su Xiaolan heard Mo Hai's yell and looked in the direction of the voice. They saw a charred man with a hoe in his hand and a large bag of flame crystals on his back. He was looking at them anxiously, and Lin and Su Xiaolan were both shocked. Holy F asterisk CK. Who was this person? Mo Hai's heart sank when he saw Lin and Su Xiaolan's shocked and confused expressions. However, he still yelled, "It's me, I'm Mo Hai." And Lin and Su Xiaolan were even more shocked. What? You're Mo Hai? Why is senior brother Mo Hai also in the realm of stars? Heavens! Mo Hai, you've been tortured to this extent. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were both enraged when they saw Mo Hai's miserable state. Now is not the time to bicker about this. Hurry up and run. The Vermilion Bird tribe's revenge is coming soon. Mo Hai was extremely anxious. He flew to Lin and Su Xiaolan's side and anxiously urged them. How can I run? The word run doesn't exist in my dictionary. And Lin said calmly with a proud expression. Su Xiaolan even drew her dragon sparrow sword. Senior brother Mo Hai has been tortured to this extent. The Vermilion Bird tribe has gone too far. I, the Divine Phoenix Maiden, will definitely not sit by and do nothing. And Lin was furious. Don't worry, senior brother Mo Hai. I will definitely avenge you. Mo Hai's heart sank. Why did things seem to have gotten worse after he appeared? Previously, Lin and Su Xiaolan might have been able to escape on their own. But after he appeared, their hatred toward the vermilion bird tribe had skyrocketed. Very quickly, the entire red vermilion bird planet began to tremble. The enormous array formation covered the earth and covered the sky. Endless scorching earth fire soared into the sky, forming a giant scarlet vermilion bird at the peak of the sky that was 1,000,000 feet long. It's appeared. That's the Red Sparrow planet's planetary formation. The Red Sparrow, God-Killer formation. Dao Ji's legs were trembling, and he had a horrified expression on his face. This is a terrifying formation that is said to be able to instantly kill all Dao integration stage cultivators. It's over, it's over, it's over. Is it too late for me to distance myself from this? Not only him, but the other miners also retreated in fear, afraid that they would be affected by the formation's attack. All of the vermilion bird tribe, living beings, looked up at Enlin with haughty expressions. Anyone who dares to attack or return to void stage mighty figure of our vermilion bird tribe will only have one fate, and that is death. Despicable fools! How dare you challenge the might of the vermilion bird tribe? I'll show you the true power of the vermilion bird tribe. It's your honor to die under the power of the most noble vermilion bird. Die, ants! Die, 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 die. A bunch of spirit-nurturing stage and soul formation stage trash shouted wildly in the distance, displaying their loud voices. And Lin glanced at them, and a look of exasperation appeared on his face. The weaker they are, the more powerful their mouths are. Su Xiaolan massaged her brows. Although the bloodline of the vermilion bird tribe is indeed powerful and has a noble and holy aura, why are these pure-blooded vermilion birds before us all acting like shrews? If possible, I really don't want to admit that half of my bloodline belongs to the vermilion bird. Once their status rises, no one will be able to control them, so they'll naturally become arrogant, and Lin said with a smile. Is this the time to talk about this? We've been trapped by the formation, and the vermilion bird tribe is going to deal with us. Why are you still laughing? Hurry up and run. Emohai was so anxious that he was about to cry, yet Lin and Su Xiaolan were still chatting cheerfully and wittily. Where did their confidence come from? Run? Why should we run? And Lin cocked his head to the side. The vermilion bird tribe's attack is coming. What else can we do but run? Emohai replied in a panic. If the vermilion bird tribe's attack you speak of is this red vermilion bird god-slaying formation, Lin's snowy white eyes looked toward the boundless crimson formation. He drew his evil-slaying sword and abruptly slashed in a certain direction. As long as we do this, we'll be able to take care of it. Boom! A dark black sword projection split heaven and earth. A gap was suddenly torn open in the crimson formation by a peerlessly domineering power of darkness. The massive crimson vermilion bird in the sky let loose a wail of anguish as its body was forcibly disintegrated. Immediately afterward, the formation that encompassed the sky and earth suddenly collapsed, transforming into countless specks of red light that disappeared without a trace. The extremely oppressive might instantly disappeared into thin air. It's gone. Emohai's mouth gaped open in shock. He stared blankly at the white-robed male who was wielding the black sword. He suddenly felt that this male's silhouette was a little dazzling. Impossible. That's a planetary formation that utilizes the flame power of the entire planet. It's capable of insta-killing all super mighty beings of the Dao integration stage. How could it be destroyed with a single strike? Daoji's expression was completely blank. It was as if he had just witnessed an unbelievable miracle. The other miners were all astonished. The excited vermilion birds were also dumbfounded. What happened? Why did this happen? Beep, beep, beep. Planetary crisis. Level 1 alert. Level 1 alert. Unleash vermilion bird wave now. Range. The entire vermilion bird tribe. A series of alarms reverberated throughout the red vermilion bird planet. Level 1 alert. This is the warning for the destruction of a planet. I really didn't think that he would be able to do this. Dao Ji took a deep breath and looked toward the male in the distance. There was a look of awe and veneration in his eyes. The supervisors of the vermilion bird tribe were even more aware of what this warning signified. The male in the distance possessed the power to destroy an entire planet. Moreover, they could also be destroyed by him at any moment. And Lin's gaze drifted over to the vermilion bird supervisors in the distance. The vermilion birds who had been shouting fearlessly earlier all shrunk their heads back. They were so cowardly that they couldn't utter a single word. Seeing this, Emohai couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Even if you were more powerful than the vermilion bird tribe, in the eyes of the vermilion bird tribe, you were still trash. This saying didn't seem to apply to Enlin. When a person's power reached a certain level, they could really strike fear and admiration into the hearts of the vermilion bird tribe. Right at this moment, a loud and holy voice suddenly traveled over from the distance. Out of the way! Those who have nothing to do with this, get out of the way! The 6 vermilion bird sages are handling a case. Holy flames of 6 different colors filled the entire sky. It was as if the scorching temperature was going to incinerate everything in this world. There was another wave of commotion among the crowd of miners. They silently continued to retreat and looked up at the sky with reverence in their eyes. It was as if they were looking at some mythical figure. The 6 vermilion bird sages were renowned overlords in the entire realm of stars. Each of them was at the Tao integration pinnacle stage and possessed the purest vermilion bird bloodline. Moreover, each of them possessed a holy flame of a different element. It could be said that they were the most powerful beings below the god of creation stage. 6 gigantic figures descended from the heavens, exuding boundless might. The living beings on the red vermilion bird planet instinctively found it difficult to breathe. Some of them had already gone weak in the knees and started to tremble in fear of being affected by the terrifying holy flames in the sky. Each of the 6 vermilion bird sages possessed the power to destroy a planet. And now, all 6 of the 6 vermilion bird sages had been mobilized. Chapter 1916. And Lin raised his head and looked up at the 6 mighty beings in the sky. Each and every one of their wings could encompass an area with a radius of tens of thousands of feet, and a gentle flap of their wings could conjure up gale-force winds that could incinerate hundreds of tall mountains. Not only that, but the extremely pure and vast bloodline aura emanating from their bodies struck countless living beings with a sense of inferiority, and they instinctively wanted to submit to these noble and beautiful beings. There were a total of 6 of these beings. The holy flames unleashed by them had already blanketed the entire sky, and they were as dazzling and spectacular as the sunset, with no end in sight. If these holy flames were to fall, they would be able to instantly annihilate all living beings on this planet. Each of the 6 vermilion bird sages possesses an aura comparable to that of guardian deities like Bai Shui and Qi Yu, but there are a total of 6 of them. Is this what Bai Shui meant when she said that they could fight on par with the vermilion bird tribe? And Lin looked at the 6 powerful vermilion birds with a speechless expression. But the guardian deities of the Azure Dragon tribe can unleash a power comparable to that of a god of creation. This is a unique trait of the Azure Dragon tribe, and the vermilion bird tribe doesn't have a similar mystic technique. Su Xiaolan smiled lightly. That's true, and Lin nodded. The Azure Dragon tribe's guardian deities could unleash a short-lived mystic technique, and even though it was a one-time consumable, its explosive power was not inferior to Earth's nuclear deterrence. Not only could it intimidate its opponents, but it could also turn the tide of the battle once it was unleashed. Mr. Enlin, what should we do now? This isn't the time to be talking about this, is it? The 6 vermilion bird sages have all been mobilized. Mo Hai spoke nervously. He had just witnessed Enlin's absolute power, but he still couldn't help but panic in the face of 6 vermilion bird sages. Each and every one of these vermilion birds gave him an aura that far exceeded that of the sect leader and grand elder of the vermilion bird sect. He didn't even dare to imagine just how powerful they were. Lowly mortals, we are the 6 vermilion bird sages, the supreme rulers of the vermilion bird tribe. Do you know your crimes for attacking the venerated vermilion bird tribe? One of the vermilion birds, whose entire body was enshrouded in boundless white mist, spoke in an ethereal voice. That voice was pleasant and ethereal to the extreme, not like the voice of the mortal world. Moreover, it contained an inviolable dignity. And Lin looked up at the 6 proud vermilion birds in the sky and sneered. What's with all the nonsense? If you want to fight, then fight. Stop wasting time. If it weren't for the great Empress Vermilion Bird, I would have killed those vermilion birds who offended me a long time ago. That's right, and Lin had shown mercy in the end. He hadn't killed Ing Kai, Huang Muzi, and the other living beings. And Mohai was given quite a fright by Lin's words. What the F*** CK? And Lin's words were too domineering, weren't they? This was the rhythm of a war. Rumble, sure enough, the sacred flames in the sky surged wildly. Above the divine flame was the holy flame, and the holy flame was the highest level of all flames. Even in the Tai Chu continent, which was at the pinnacle of the cultivation civilization, it was extremely rare to see a holy flame. However, 6 of them had suddenly appeared here. Furthermore, their bloodlines were so pure and profound, so the might of their holy flames was even more terrifying. The 6 vermilion bird sages are probably the most skilled at playing with fire in the entire realm of stars, right? And Lin seemed to be completely unfazed by the 6 vermilion bird sages' rage, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Playing with fire? We are the gods who rule over fire. How dare the likes of you criticize us? Vulgar and despicable beings can only spout such vulgar words. In the sky, the 6 vermilion bird sages' voices were like the voice of the heavens, and their tones were extremely cold. And Lin didn't know what to say. Look, they're not happy to be praised either. Cut the crap and hurry up and purify them. Vermilion bird Nan Li, vermilion bird Yu Luo, vermilion bird Bing Xin, vermilion bird Tianjin, vermilion bird Huanjin, vermilion bird Taijing. I sentence you to the punishment of burning by fire. Kneel and accept your death. Boom, boom, boom. 6 streaks of holy flames fell from the sky before crashing viciously toward Enlin. From Enlin's perspective, it looked as if the sky had transformed into a sea of holy flames. Then, the sea quickly fell toward the ground, incinerating everything in its path. There was nowhere to hide. Just the boundless might of the flames alone was enough to make all living beings lose the courage to resist. And Mohai was also scared out of his wits. He had never seen such an apocalyptic scene before. Although he loved being burned by fire, his instincts told him that he would be incinerated into ashes the moment he came into contact with a sea of flames that was falling from the sky. There was no way he could enjoy it. And Lin looked at the falling flames and smiled. You say you're the gods who rule over fire? Sorry, I'm the one. A crimson divine halo appeared above his head, and Lin made a grabbing motion toward the falling holy flames, and a fluctuation that was imbued with the power of the supreme laws of nature instantly spread throughout heaven and earth. Thump! It was like the sound of a heartbeat. The 6 types of terrifying sacred flames instantly froze in place like a painting. Even the flames on the bodies of the 6 vermilion bird sages instantly broke free of their control. They froze in place and then bowed down. That's right, all the flames between heaven and earth lowered their embers and temperatures as they bowed down to a stunning white-robed figure. The vermilion birds and miners on the red vermilion bird planet were dumbstruck. The bodies of the 6 vermilion bird sages trembled violently. Their arrogant faces that looked down on them like ants were now filled with confusion and shock. For the first time, an incomprehensible fear surfaced in their hearts. What kind of power is this? Why am I losing control of my flames? Even the 6 holy flames have bowed down to me. Why are you all still standing? Get down. And Lin roared angrily, and his eyes suddenly turned a pure gold color. Countless divine symbols flashed in his eyes, and at the same time, a golden fluctuation spread to every corner of heaven and earth. Regardless of whether it was the 6 vermilion bird sages or the living beings on the red vermilion bird planet, they all felt as if they were looking at a supreme being when they saw Lin. This was a boundlessly majestic figure that stood between heaven and earth. His eyes were like the sun and the moon, and his shoulders were like a galaxy. An unimaginably supreme aura emanated from his body. Super divine might technique activate. No. The 6 vermilion bird sages trembled violently as they howled in anguish and plummeted from the sky. They were the most noble beings. They looked down on everything, disrespected heaven and earth, and only respected the great Empress Vermilion Bird. But now, they actually felt boundless respect and submission towards another existence. They wanted to kneel down and become the other party's bootlickers. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled and trembled. The most supreme and prideful beings of the Vermilion Bird tribe plummeted to the ground one after another and fell into the dust. They lay helplessly on the ground and pressed their heads against the ground in front of Enlin as they trembled in fear. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages all knelt before Enlin. Chapter 1917. This was an extremely shocking scene. This was an unimaginable scene for all the living beings present. The extremely proud and noble 6 Vermilion Bird sages, the most arrogant beings in this world who wouldn't show any respect even to a god of creation, were actually kneeling and kowtowing to Enlin on the red Vermilion Bird planet. Almost all of the Vermilion Bird living beings had their eyes rolled into the back of their heads, and they were foaming at the mouth. Many of the miners who had been forced to do manual labor also fainted and collapsed to the ground. Those who could resist fainting were all returned to void stage mighty figures. However, their legs had also become weak, and they all knelt to the ground. Dao Ji and Mo Hai were no exception. In reality, Enlin's target was only the 6 Vermilion Bird sages. As for the other living beings, it was merely a wisp of his might that had accidentally dispersed. So, the divine might you unleash at full power is this powerful. Su Xiaolan's face was flushed red, and her eyes were as bright as stars as she stared at Enlin. How about it? Do you want to have a taste as well? Enlin had yet to unleash his divine might, and he glanced at Su Xiaolan. What? What are you saying? Don't be naughty. A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's exquisite features as she spoke with a hint of anger. If Enlin unleashed his super divine might technique on her, she would probably kneel down as well. Right? How embarrassing. Just thinking about it makes me feel both embarrassed and excited. Enlin waved a hand, and the holy flames that had engulfed the entire heaven and earth instantly disappeared. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages were struggling violently on the ground. Their brains were telling them not to kneel for the sake of their pride and dignity, but their bodies and bloodlines were instinctively telling them to kneel. This was the power of the super divine might technique. The weak were insta-killed, and the powerful were forced to kneel. Impossible. This is impossible. Why is my bloodline afraid of your might? My bloodline is clearly the noblest of all. Ah, great Empress Vermilion Bird, I've let you down. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages were either shocked and terrified, or they were so ashamed that they wanted to commit suicide. They, who were the proudest of them, actually kneeled to a human. This caused them to completely lose their dignity. Yes, a bird's life without pride was meaningless. Chirp! Sparrow Bing Xian's body was the first to be ignited with frosty flames. It wanted to freeze him to death with its flames. After seeing how decisive Vermilion Bird Bing Xian was, the rest of the 6 Vermilion Bird sages also revealed determined expressions. At this moment, a pair of icy blue eyes suddenly appeared in the sky. This pair of eyes was especially beautiful, like a clear spring, pure and flawless, refreshing the mind. The scorching temperature of the red sparrow planet also cooled down because of this pair of eyes. A cool breeze blew past. The flames on Vermilion Bird Bing Xian's body were suddenly dispersed by a mighty force. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages looked up at the sky, and their eyes suddenly turned red. They knelt on the ground even more piously, and tears of grievance and shame flowed from their eyes. Greetings, great Empress Vermilion Bird. Greetings, great Empress Vermilion Bird. This time, they didn't feel any psychological burden lying down. Although they were kneeling toward Enlin, they hoped that Enlin wouldn't misunderstand. They were kneeling toward the great Empress Vermilion Bird in the sky. Sixth son, this matter cannot be blamed on you. It was he who forcefully suppressed your unyielding heads. Your bloodline is still noble, and your pride still shines. An extremely dignified and pleasing voice came from the sky. As if they had been cured, the 6 vermilion bird sages all knelt on the ground with tears streaming down their faces. Thank you, great Empress Vermilion Bird. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's glory shall never be extinguished. We are willing to go through fire and water for the great Empress Vermilion Bird. And Lin felt like his horizons had been broadened by the fact that such proud beings as the 6 vermilion bird sages were speaking like bootlickers. At this moment, the pair of beautiful eyes in the sky turned toward Lin and the others. And Lin's heart jolted, and his body tensed up. He was about to face the might of a god of creation who possessed a holy birth. A few days ago, I swallowed my own divine sense and went into seclusion to absorb it. As a result, I didn't have the time to receive the two of you. I apologize for causing you to suffer, the great Empress Vermilion Bird said in a gentle voice. Her voice was so warm and gentle that it was as if she were the big sister next door. Upon hearing this, the 6 vermilion bird sages, Emo, Hai, and Lin, and the others were instantly dumbfounded. What's going on? Why is the great Empress Vermilion Bird speaking in such a friendly manner? Not only is she explaining why she didn't come, but she's even apologizing? Didn't she see that Lin had beaten up the supervisor and forced the 6 vermilion bird sages to kneel? Lin was already prepared for a fight, but the great Empress Vermilion Bird's reaction didn't make sense. Wasn't she known as the proudest and most revered being? Countless questions surged into everyone's minds. However, the great Empress Vermilion Bird turned toward Su Xiaolan with kindness in her eyes. I was the one who summoned you here. I'm truly sorry that you received such treatment. I'll definitely make it up to you. All the Vermilion Bird Tribe living beings were astonished. So, Su Xiaolan was really summoned here by the great Empress Vermilion Bird? Huang Muzi, Ing Kai, and the other vermilion birds were even more regretful upon hearing this. They really wanted to slap themselves a few times. Unfortunately, they had already been crippled by Lin. They couldn't even move. Ha, that's not a problem. It's good that the misunderstanding has been resolved. And Lin chuckled amiably. In any case, they didn't suffer any losses from this conflict. Instead, they felt quite satisfied. Follow my directions, and I'll take you to the Vermilion Bird Tribe's flame, heart, immortal realm. There, we can settle all our karma. The great Empress Vermilion Bird invited them. Immediately afterward, the pair of eyes in the sky transformed into a small red sparrow that flew toward a certain direction. Flame, heart, immortal realm? The great Empress Vermilion Bird is actually inviting us there? Only we have the right to enter that place. The 6 vermilion bird sages were slightly indignant. However, they could only mutter among themselves as they followed behind the small red sparrow. And Lin and Su Xiaolan looked at each other. Then, they rose into the sky and followed behind the small red sparrow. The great Empress Vermilion Bird had taken the initiative to invite them to settle their karma. Both of them had the same thoughts, so they naturally had to accept this invitation. If they handled the karma of a holy beast well, there would be many benefits. Hey, wait for me. And Mohai eagerly followed behind them. On the red vermilion bird planet, the miners and supervising vermilion birds looked on as Lin and the others flew further and further away. They felt as if they were dreaming. They all thought that Lin and the others had offended the Vermilion Bird Tribe and were about to be executed on the spot. Who would have thought that Lin was actually able to break through a planetary slaughter formation with a single strike? Then, he subdued the 6 vermilion bird sages with a single thought. Furthermore, he had displayed unimaginable prowess. In the end, he was even invited by the great Empress Vermilion Bird to the core region of the Vermilion Bird Realm. This world was truly insane. Since when did a freakishly powerful mighty figure like Lin appear in the human race? Daoji muttered to himself as he gazed at Lin's disappearing figure. No one could answer his question. However, the living beings on the red vermilion bird planet knew that the breathtaking white figure had already been deeply engraved in their minds. Perhaps they would never be able to forget it for the rest of their lives. Chapter 1918. Unlin, this vermilion bird, is a treacherous and cunning character. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's smiling at you, but it's definitely cursing you countless times behind your back. It could turn on you at any time, so you have to be careful. Emohai transmitted his voice to Unlin. Is that so? Unlin faltered momentarily. I thought the vermilion bird was a nice big sister. Nice my A**s. When she needed the divine sense in my ring, she was so nice to me and even made the arrogant vermilion bird tribe spirit transform into a beautiful woman to dance for me. In the end, after the great Empress Vermilion Bird absorbed what she wanted, she turned into an ingrate and banished me to the red vermilion bird planet to mine. Emohai gritted his teeth in hatred. Unlin clicked his tongue in wonder upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan also became wary upon hearing this. However, the vermilion bird bloodline in her body instinctively made her feel close to the holy beast, the vermilion bird. By the way, Sister Shangwan Yi, how are Brother Yang Yuan and the others? Su Xiaolan asked. They were sucked into the realm of stars like me. However, when I arrived at the vermilion bird territory, I couldn't see them anymore. Emohai replied dejectedly. Unlin stroked his chin. I have the Ring of the East, so I was teleported to the Azure Dragon territory. You have the Ring of the South, so you were teleported to the Vermilion Bird territory. Based on this, they should have been teleported to the White Tiger territory and the Xian Wu territory respectively. Emohai panicked. Oh no, don't tell me they've been sent to mine as well. Unlin and Su Xiaolan rolled their eyes at this senior brother. Did this idiot's brain go haywire from all the mining? Did he really think that all holy beasts were as ungrateful as the vermilion bird? Even if they were ungrateful, they might not have been sent to mine. Why would they be sent to mine coal? Besides, perhaps they were lucky enough to be receiving friendly treatment from a holy beast right now. Unlin felt like the white tiger was a bit more ferocious and aggressive. Brother Yang Yuan might be in some danger, but Sister Shangwan Yi would definitely be able to go to the Xian Wu territory with ease. Shangwan Yi was the reincarnation of the god of creation stage, Ice Matriarch. Now that she had awakened most of her bloodline and memories and progressed to the Tao integration initial stage, her potential was limitless. Now that they had encountered the black tortoise, a holy beast of the same attribute, if they could have a friendly exchange and cooperation, the benefits would definitely be greater than two. The black tortoise had a good temper, so this kind of cooperation should be easy to achieve, right? Shangwan Yi's cultivation base should be able to progress further, right? However, Enlin was wrong about this. In the extreme north of the star region, Shangwan Yi voluntarily returned the Ring of the North, and Xian Wu was indeed a good holy beast. In return, Xian Wu took her to the mystic ball domain to observe the paramount Tao of mountain and water. In the end, just as they arrived below the profound sphere inexplicably split open. A terrifying high-energy flood instantly engulfed the entire secret place and the planet, causing huge losses to the Black Tortoise clan. Xian Wu was busy fighting the flood for 3 days and 3 nights before finally stabilizing the situation. The mystic ball domain was leaking, so Xian Wu had no choice but to take Shangwan Yi elsewhere. It took Shangwan Yi elsewhere to enjoy the rainbow Tao sky of the Xian Wu tribe. However, when they arrived at the rainbow Tao sky, the sky was suddenly struck by a once-in-10,000-year storm. Xian Wu was dumbstruck. Why? Why was it so unlucky? Shangwan Yi told it to just take her back to the Tai Chu continent. How could the black tortoise do something like that? It had received a favor from the holy beast, yet it did nothing in return. Was this something a holy beast should do? It was a complete insult to its title as a holy beast. After a few more twists and turns, Xian Wu didn't have anything else to offer, so it decided to take Shangwan Yi to observe its most important treasure, the Xian Wu heart essence. This was a paragon treasure that was related to the holy Tao. The holy beast Xian Wu spat out the Xian Wu heart essence from its stomach before introducing the Xian Wu heart essence to Shangwan Yi with a triumphant expression. It also told her that she could observe the Xian Wu heart essence for an entire day. However, before the Xianwu heart essence could even be handed over to Shangwan Yi, the elements and energy within the heart essence suddenly became violent. It had clearly entered a period of instability. The Xianwu heart essence would have its period a few times every 10,000 years. Xianwu's expression shifted slightly, but it didn't panic. But at this moment, due to all sorts of coincidences, the chaotic currents within the void interacted with each other, creating a multidimensional destruction. In the end, an extremely terrifying chaotic lightning was born. The chaotic bolt of lightning instantly tore through the void and struck the Xianwu heart essence before it could react. Boom! The Xianwu heart essence exploded. Tragedy struck Xianwu. Due to the backlash, it was heavily injured and hurriedly absorbed the shattered black tortoise heart essence. It didn't even have a time to say goodbye and immediately chose to go into seclusion. Shangwan Yi stood rooted to the spot with a blank expression. In the end, she was arrested by the Xianwu Divine Guardian Squad for attempting to assassinate Xianwu. Just as Enlin was thinking about Shangwan Yi was contemplating life in prison. On the contrary, Yang Yuan, who was in the White Tiger clan's territory, had used the holy vermilion flame unique to his body to cleanse the frost poison from the body of the White Tiger's most beloved daughter at the most critical moment, thereby obtaining a massive opportunity. Not only did he receive the core inheritance of the White Tiger, but he also received a vast amount of treasures and gifts. There were pros and cons to this as well. Yang Yuan received the White Tiger's inheritance and successfully broke through to the return to Void Pinnacle stage. This was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but because he saved the White Tiger's daughter, he was now being pursued by the White Tiger's daughter. For example, he was being pounced on by the White Tiger's daughter right now. In summary, Mo Hai was the most pitiful of the four people who had the rings. The pitiful Mo Hai thought that he was mining as well within the Vermilion Bird territory. The gargantuan Vermilion Bird star was situated at the center of several hundred planets, and boundless flames emanated from it. 8 normal-sized stars were revolving around the Vermilion Bird star. What was strange was that the surrounding planets were almost completely unaffected by these 8 stars. One of the stars suddenly faltered before warping and transforming into a gargantuan flaming bird. Its entire body was an explosive platinum color, and an aura of destruction continued to emanate from it. With a light flap of its wings, scorching air currents would be able to annihilate all living beings in an entire domain. Its body was curled up with its wings folded around itself, as if it were still a sun. However, it raised its head slightly to look at a nearby planet before uttering a few words. Vermilion Bird, I have a bad feeling about this. There's a lot of uncertainty in this situation. It was the first being to refer to the Vermilion Bird by its name. Within the flame, heart, immortal realm. A regal being with peerlessly vibrant feathers and enshrouded in a 9-colored holy light opened her extremely beautiful eyes with a smile. This is the perfect opportunity. We can't miss it. I've been waiting for this moment for a very long time. There have been countless successors and countless descendants, but I've finally found one. I don't want to wait any longer. The platinum mighty being remained silent as its body slowly melted into the flames before transforming into a star that revolved around the gargantuan Vermilion Bird star. At this moment, Enlin and the others had already set foot in the Flameheart Immortal Realm. Chapter 1919. The Flameheart Immortal Realm was the place where the immortal aura of the immortal Vermilion star gathered. However, this so-called immortal realm was different from what Enlin had imagined. Ordinary living beings would die in this immortal realm. The sky was a clear azure color. Terrifying and pure flame energy transformed into crimson winds that swept across the land. Every gust of wind was tens of thousands of degrees Celsius and could melt or vaporize a living being with a decent cultivation base. Colorful, heat-resistant plants grew all over the land, and they were dazzling. There were even rivers of golden liquid flowing in some places. The temperature of the liquid was even higher, almost to the extent of distorting the void. However, There were also many adorable flame beasts playing in the river. There were also many flame beasts on the ground. Some of them had gorgeous wings, while others were cute and adorable. However, one should not be deceived by their appearances. They could melt a soul formation stage powerful being with just a spit of saliva. Ordinary living beings were very afraid of this place, as it was extremely hot. However, the extremely rich and pure flame power here was the favorite of living beings who cultivated in fire-type spell techniques. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was a top-notch cultivation ground. Su Xiaolan already had a look of enjoyment on her face. His eyes were filled with infatuation and passion, and his entire body was restless. He looked like he wanted to take off his clothes and completely integrate into this world. The 6 vermilion bird sages snorted in disdain when they saw their behavior. Ignorant country bumpkins. It's their good fortune to be able to come to the flame heart immortal realm. How despicable and laughable. This is the limit of the human race. Look at that man who wants to take off his clothes. How disgusting. These vermilion bird living beings could always find something to spit on and build a chain of contempt. And Lin glanced at the 6 vermilion bird sages when he heard that. The 6 proud vermilion birds instantly trembled and fell silent. They did not want to kneel anymore, especially not in a sacred place like the Flame Heart Immortal Realm. If they did that, they would really be so ashamed that they would want to commit suicide. And Lin smiled faintly. What kind of *T prideful race is that? Aren't they still trembling under my super divine might technique? And Lin and Su Xiaolan followed the little red vermilion bird and witnessed many fiery wonders, such as the glazed flame lake, the flaming tree, the starry plains, the 100,000 feet fiery boulders, and the 3-colored rain clouds. Su Xiaolan blinked her bright eyes as she looked on with an eager expression. She really wanted to leave the group and go off to the side to admire the spectacle. She wanted to have some fun and have some fun. However, she wanted to go the vermilion bird. After a short while, everyone arrived beside a small, exquisite pond. Here, they saw the paramount being of the vermilion bird tribe, who was renowned throughout the entire realm of stars, the great Empress Vermilion Bird. She actually had the appearance of a gorgeous and noble woman. She wore a divine crown on her head. Her eyes were clear and warm. Her nose was tall, and her lips were dark red like a tender cherry. Her skin was crystalline and translucent, and her snow-white skin revealed a faint blush from the inside out, causing her to seem exceptionally enchanting and intoxicating. What shocked Lin the most was her limitless and graceful figure. Her beautiful figure was wrapped in a red feather dress. She was clearly a devastatingly beautiful seductress, but her eyes were clear and pure, giving off the feeling that she was a holy maiden with no desires. This was the perfect fusion of purity and seductiveness, and Lin was momentarily stunned by her beauty. Emohai was completely stupefied. This is the vermilion bird holy beast? She's so beautiful. Why is she treating me like a high and mighty vermilion bird? Why is she treating Lin and Su Xiaolan in such a beautiful and enchanting manner? Why? You're here. Come, sit here. The great Empress Vermilion Bird pointed at a deck chair beside the pool with a gentle smile on her face when she saw Lin and Su Xiaolan. She was sitting beside the pool and soaking her feet. The pool water was golden, and it looked like ordinary pool water. The only difference was that its color was different. However, Lin's pupils contracted slightly when he saw the pool water. The liquid inside the pool was the purest essence of the sun. This was the power of Yang that had reached the pinnacle. He had swallowed a sun before, so he was very familiar with this kind of power. The sun essence contained in the pool water was already enough to form a new sun. Even Dao integration stage super mighty figures would be severely wounded or killed if they came into contact with this pool water, let alone return to void stage mighty figures. This level of flame power was definitely not something they could endure. The great Empress Vermilion Bird soaked in the sun essence with extreme pleasure. Her slender feet swayed in the pool water, creating ripples in the water. She appeared to be extremely content and carefree. She was as beautiful as a painting. Upon hearing this, Lin and Su Xiaolan sat down on the deck chairs. You must be tired after such a long journey. Soak your feet in the pool water. It can relax your muscles and activate your meridians. Especially for Su Xiaolan, it's very beneficial for you. The great Empress Vermilion Bird winked at Su Xiaolan. Even this simple action seemed to be imbued with a myriad of emotions. Truly a lord that could captivate all living things, and Lin thought to himself. Upon hearing this, Su Xiaolan took off her shoes cautiously. She was a little apprehensive and hesitant, but in the end, she still dipped her foot into the pool water. Ow, hot, hot, hot. She let out a delicate cry, and her cheeks became slightly flushed. Su Xiaolan initially wanted to withdraw her foot. However, a peculiar sense of comfort transmitted from her bloodline made her cling onto the pool water, and she resisted the urge to withdraw her foot. Soon, she adapted to the temperature of the pool water, and she started to moan in comfort. And Lin's lips twitched slightly. This was similar to when he was a mortal and soaked his feet in a basin of water. At first, it was a little hot, but then it was very comfortable. Being able to experience this feeling after becoming a cultivator was truly not bad. Although Su Xiaolan was currently soaking in the core essence of the sun, water that could scald Tao integration stage cultivators to death. That's right, Su Xiaolan was currently soaking in the sun's core essence. This was probably the difference between a top-notch cultivator and a mortal. And Lin also wanted to soak his feet. The great Empress Vermilion Bird noticed Lin's expression, and she couldn't help but smile faintly. Come on, don't be so reserved. Come and soak yourself. I remember that you also cultivate a fire-type cultivation method, so soaking your feet will be very beneficial to your body and cultivation. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's words were like a spring breeze caressing one's cheeks, and Lin was very pleased to hear this, and he also put his feet down to soak. Zzz. Scorching and pure flame energy instantly enveloped his feet and stimulated his body. Even though Lin's body of the war god had reached the phenomenal success stage, he still felt an incomparable scorching sensation. However, after he got used to this scorching sensation, he felt especially comfortable. Wisps of flame energy transformed into warm currents that flowed from the soles of his feet to his entire body, making him feel extremely comfortable. There's something special about this pool water. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages were envious, jealous. Even they didn't have the right to soak their feet together with the great Empress Vermilion Bird. What right did these two despicable humans have? What right did they have to enjoy a beautiful soak with the great Empress Vermilion Bird? The suckers gritted their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. And Lin was just enjoying himself when he suddenly felt a strange movement beneath his feet. Chapter 1920. And Lin felt a very special feeling emerge from the soles of his feet. It was a soft and itchy feeling. It was as if something wet and slippery was sliding across his feet. It was very comfortable, yet very sensitive. His expression changed slightly, and he immediately looked toward the pool. However, he couldn't see anything. The feeling from his feet also disappeared, and Lin initially thought that this was a coincidence, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Then he suddenly felt a soft and itchy feeling from the soles of his feet. It was as if something soft and smooth was teasing him. Sensing this, and Lin glanced toward the great Empress Vermilion Bird. Coincidentally, the great Empress Vermilion Bird was also looking at him. She raised her eyebrows slightly and blinked. Her extremely exquisite face was expressionless, yet it exuded an extremely seductive and alluring aura. And Lin, no way, what's going on? The great Empress Vermilion Bird is seducing me? But what's her motive? And Lin didn't forget that the great Empress Vermilion Bird's true form was a vermilion bird. Perhaps she had transformed into a human so that she could better communicate with him and Su Xiaolan. She definitely wouldn't have the urge to reproduce with a human. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he felt another teasing sensation from the soles of his feet. Xiaolan, do you feel anything special from your feet? and Lin secretly transmitted his voice in her ear. Su Xiaolan swayed her little feet and tilted her head. I think so. It's just a little hot, but it's also a very comfortable feeling. What's wrong? And Lin, as expected, this feeling is only directed toward me. And Lin suddenly started to panic. What is the great Empress Vermilion Bird trying to do? When he was talking to Su Xiaolan just now, there was a smooth and itchy flow of heat teasing him. This is definitely a trap. I can't fall for it. And Lin suddenly withdrew his feet and smiled. I'm done. Su Xiaolan squinted her eyes in enjoyment. Seeing this, she was a little astonished. So fast. It's so comfortable in here. Shouldn't you soak more? It's good for your body. That's right. Why are you in such a hurry, Taoist and Lin? The great Empress Vermilion Bird also revealed a gentle and alluring smile. Such a beautiful and intoxicating smile. Such a gentle and soft voice. If it were anyone else, they would have already succumbed to the temptation. However, Lin's heart was as hard as steel, and he remained unmoved. It's fine, you guys enjoy yourselves. I'm going to rest on the chair. And Lin declined with a smile. Be asterisk starred. How dare you refuse great Empress Vermilion Bird's request? Vermilion Bird, Nanli roared with rage. Vermilion Luo also shouted in. Vermilion Luo you. They were extremely envious that Lin could soak his feet in the same pool as the great Empress Vermilion Bird. The great Emian Vermilion Lin, they envious, as vermilion as is sweet, and he as he is if. The great Empress Vermilion Bird shrugged nonchalantly. Forget it. Some people don't understand romance. I don't have anything to say. As she spoke, she chatted with Su Xiaolan about the Vermilion Bird tribe. From time to time, she would even joke around. She didn't have the arrogance that members of the Vermilion Bird tribe should have. Instead, she was conversing with them as if they were on the same level. This made Su Xiaolan feel a little overwhelmed. She had come here to resolve her karma. Why did it feel like they were about to become two very close sisters after interacting with each other for a while? However, this was all a misconception. After chatting for a while, they finally talked about this karma. At the time, I was imprisoned in the Vermilion Bird Trial Grounds. A powerful being from the Man tribe took advantage of this and extracted my Essence Dao blood. Unexpectedly, this Essence Dao blood was obtained by you by a stroke of luck. Not only that, but you also brought this bloodline to greater heights and almost reached the pinnacle of the Vermilion Bird tribe. This is your destiny, and I'm very happy for you. The great Empress Vermilion Bird spoke lazily as if this was a trivial matter that had nothing to do with her. Speaking of this, I still have to thank you. If it weren't for your Essence Dao blood, I, Su Xiaolan, wouldn't have achieved what I have today. Speaking of this, Su Xiaolan appeared extremely solemn. She bowed deeply to the holy beast Vermilion Bird. The great Empress Vermilion Bird looked at the solemn Su Xiaolan, and there was still a gentle smile on her face. There's no need to thank me. This is an opportunity that belongs to you, and I didn't do anything. However, if you really want to repay me, I do have a suggestion. Please tell me, Su Xiaolan said solemnly. I'll definitely do my best to fulfill your wish. It's not a big deal, so there's no need to be so serious. The great Empress Vermilion Bird smiled gently. I just want you to inherit my holy birth. I don't want to be the holy beast Vermilion Bird anymore. How about you take over? The atmosphere suddenly fell silent, and Lin was lying on his chair. Upon hearing this, he almost fell off his chair, and Mo Hai's eyes widened, and he even forgot to breathe. The 6 Vermilion Bird sages were all dumbstruck. Even Su Xiaolan felt like her brain was buzzing, and her mind went blank for a short period of time. What? What did you just say? Her breathing quickened. Can you inherit my holy birth? Just treat it as your repayment. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's eyes were clear and gentle as she calmly looked at the slightly agitated woman beside her. Su Xiaolan felt like her outlook on cultivation had received a severe blow. There was a look of incredulity on her face. What's going on? Am I repaying you, or are you repaying me? It was as if a person's life was in danger, and then Papa Ma suddenly appeared and saved that person's life. That person ran over to Papa Ma and wanted to repay him. Papa Ma replied, "Sure, help me do something. How about inheriting my business empire worth several trillion yuan?" Furthermore, he would also give her several hundred billion yuan as a bonus. This was King bizarre. It was too surreal. Su Xiaolan found this extremely difficult to accept, and Lin almost knelt down in front of Su Xiaolan. He finally realized that he definitely had the attribute of bringing prosperity to his wife. When Su Xiaolan went out with him, all the fortuitous encounters belonged to her. The inheritance of the Azure Dragon tribe was already quite extraordinary. During their journey to the Dragon Dao Pond, Su Xiaolan had been using hacks to make contact with the essence of her Dao of the true dragon. She didn't think that her trip to the Vermilion Bird tribe to settle her karma would be even more heaven-defying. The Vermilion Bird tribe's boss actually wanted her to inherit the holy birth. It was too bizarre, too dreamy. The clear origin dragon had sacrificed his life for this holy birth. What about Lan? She had wanted to repay the debt of gratitude, but the other party had given her a sainthood instead. If the clear origin dragon were to learn about this, he would probably be enraged to death. Who could he go to reason with? The 6 Vermilion bird sages were so frightened that they almost broke down. They continuously kowtowed and wailed as they begged the Great Empress Vermilion Bird to retract her command. Why was that? Great Empress Vermilion Bird was doing a great job, so why did she have to abdicate? Also, why did they let a mixed-race human inherit the holy position? None of the living beings present understood. Even Lan and Lin didn't understand. It's actually not that difficult to understand. A gentle smile appeared on the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's face as she leaned towards Su Xiaolan and began to explain the reason behind this. Chapter 1921. The 4 holy beasts are the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Xian Wu. They are the most powerful beings in the universe. They are immortal and eternal. I represent the one and only. There is only one being in the entire universe that could be called the Vermilion Bird. The Great Empress Vermilion Bird looked at Su Xiaolan and said slowly, "However, I don't represent the one and only. In fact, I'm not the one and only. Instead, it's this." The Great Empress Vermilion Bird opened her tiny mouth and spat out a crimson bead. The entire heaven and earth changed color the moment the bead appeared, and Lin saw a light that was even more dazzling and majestic than the sun from within the bead. An extremely pure flame power slowly flowed within the bead. An aura of eternity permeated the air. It was as if it had existed since the beginning of the universe and had been brewing for countless years. He felt as if he were facing a supreme and indestructible god, majestic and unique. Su Xiaolan was even more affected by the throbbing in her bloodline. This is the Vermilion Bird Heart essence. The Great Empress Vermilion Bird said, "Anyone who can fuse with the Vermilion Bird Heart essence can become a holy birth. This is something that all powerful beings in the realm of stars desire. However, the one and only of my tribe is not me. It's the Vermilion Bird Heart essence. Whoever possesses the Vermilion Bird Heart essence can become a holy birth Vermilion Bird. Xiaolan, you can also become a Vermilion Bird, one of the 4 holy births." The Great Empress Vermilion Bird's voice caused Su Xiaolan's heart to tremble. For holy births, she can also become one of the 4 holy births? But I'm not even at the God of Creation stage. Su Xiaolan pouted. Your growth and potential are far beyond my imagination. You've reached the Dao integration pinnacle stage in a short 100 years. I believe that with the help of the Vermilion Bird Heart essence, you can quickly take the final step and reach the God of Creation stage. Then, you can become a holy birth. The Great Empress Vermilion Bird looked at Su Xiaolan with admiration and mysterious confidence. And Lin was already numb to all of this. Great. She wasn't satisfied with the Dao integration pinnacle stage, and now she wanted to take 2 big steps at once? Wasn't she afraid of pulling on her balls by taking such big steps? Wait, no, Xiaolan doesn't have an egg. And Lin suddenly thought of what Su Xiaolan had told her before. She was worried that Lin would not be able to keep up with her if she went too far on the path of seeking Dao. She was also worried that Enlin would not be able to accompany her. Enlin felt insulted at that time. But now, Enlin felt a sense of crisis. What if he really couldn't keep up with Xiaolan? From an outyin to an outyin? The strongest son-in-law in history? Aya, how humiliating. However, it didn't seem impossible, and Lin was lost in his thoughts. Su Xiaolan expressed her confusion again. One last question. Why did you pass the sainthood to me, and what do you intend to do? A hint of melancholy finally appeared on the great Empress Vermilion Bird's smiling face. It's a long story. In any case, the sainthood is a burden to me. Panga suppressed me. Not only did he severely injure me, but he also used some kind of technique on the sainthood to suppress my power. As long as I am still a vermilion bird, the sainthood suppression will not disappear. Thus, the sainthood is a cage for me. Only by passing the sainthood to the next successor can I eliminate Pangu's power and break free from this terrifying restriction. However, it is extremely difficult to find someone who is qualified to inherit my sainthood. Even the 6 vermilion bird sages do not have the qualifications to do so. Until I met you, the great Empress Vermilion Bird gazed tenderly at Su Xiaolan. Then, she extended her slender, snow-white hand and held on to Su Xiaolan's hand. Perhaps you're the person that the heavens sent to save me. Su Xiaolan stared blankly at the great Empress Vermilion Bird. Enlin felt as if he had been struck by lightning, and he stood rooted to the spot. The 6 vermilion bird sages felt as if their hearts had been ruthlessly stabbed by swords. This works too. Come, follow my instructions, and try to touch the vermilion bird heart essence. See if you can obtain its approval. The great Empress Vermilion Bird placed the crimson bead in front of Su Xiaolan. Use the power of your bloodline and communicate with the vermilion bird heart essence. The vermilion bird heart essence will emit a corresponding light. Each type of light corresponds to a different level of adaptability. In total, there are 7 levels: crimson, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Crimson is the highest level, while purple is the lowest. When your adaptability with the vermilion bird heart essence reaches the yellow level, you can attempt to refine it. Go ahead and give it a try. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's eyes were filled with anticipation and encouragement as she looked at the azure-clothed female. Su Xiaolan gazed at the vermilion bird heart essence. From within this crimson bead, she could sense an extremely mighty power that she yearned for. Absolute light, absolute heat, absolute nobility, and absolute holiness. Furthermore, it was so unique, so beautiful. Su Xiaolan stretched out her hand and touched the crimson bead. Boom! An extremely dazzling light suddenly erupted from the vermilion bird heart essence. At first, it was purple. Then, it instantly jumped to yellow. It had reached the threshold of refinement. A hint of joy appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. At this moment, the light changed from yellow to orange. Her aptitude is actually so good. The great Empress Vermilion Bird looked at Su Xiaolan in surprise. Su Xiaolan's heart was filled with confidence. Orange should be quite outstanding. After all, yellow should be enough to refine it. Little did she know that even the 6 vermilion bird sages with top-notch bloodlines were only green in the great Empress Vermilion Bird's estimation. Orange was already an extremely freakish level of adaptability. The great Empress Vermilion Bird smiled and was just about to speak. Suddenly, the true dragon bloodline in Su Xiaolan's body pushed against the vermilion bird bloodline. Boom! The light from the vermilion bird heart essence became more intense. Then, it gradually changed from orange to crimson red. The crimson light was so intense that it was as if countless drops of liquid were slowly flowing into the surroundings. Upon seeing this, the great Empress Vermilion Bird lost her composure for the first time. Her breathing quickened, and her gaze toward Su Xiaolan became even more scorching. Is this the highest level of adaptability? Su Xiaolan was overjoyed. It's just a mere crimson. What's there to be proud of? That's right. You're just a country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. Our great Empress Vermilion Bird also has a crimson adaptability like you. That's because the maximum level of adaptability is crimson. Otherwise, any other color would be surpassed by our great Empress Vermilion Bird. The 6 vermilion bird sages who had eaten lemons were extremely jealous. Enough! Don't speak! The great Empress Vermilion Bird suddenly shouted. The 6 vermilion bird sages, who were chatting excitedly, instantly fell silent. However, even though they had been muted, they still straightened their necks and looked arrogantly at Su Xiaolan. It was unknown where their confidence came from. Xiaolan, let's go. I'll officially let you inherit my holy birth now. The great Empress Vermilion Bird held onto Su Xiaolan's hand with a warm expression. Huh? So soon? Su Xiaolan was a little astonished. She still hadn't mentally prepared herself for this. No. I've already prepared everything for you. All that's left is for you to embark on the path of the Paragon. This is a win-win situation. Come, follow me. As she spoke, the great Empress Vermilion Bird dragged Su Xiaolan toward a certain direction. And Lin felt a strong sense of déjà vu upon seeing this. Chapter 1922. And Lin couldn't help but feel like this scene was extremely familiar. The passionate great Empress Vermilion Bird, the heavenly fortuitous opportunity, and the ignorant Xiaolan. And Lin pondered for a moment. Isn't this so similar to the first time I met Downlord Luya? Holy sh**t. This isn't a trap, right? And Lin suddenly started to panic. At this moment, he saw the great Empress Vermilion Bird holding Su Xiaolan's hand and striding off into the distance. He immediately eagerly followed after them. The great Empress Vermilion Bird tilted her head toward the 6 vermilion bird sages and said calmly, I'm going to the Vermilion Bird spell altar with Ms. Su Xiaolan. Guard the surroundings and protect me. The 6 vermilion bird sages immediately lowered their heads and complied. I guarantee that I will complete this mission. I swear to serve the great Empress Vermilion Bird with my life. Is there really no way to change your mind? The 6 vermilion bird sages' eyes turned red as they looked toward the woman in a red feather dress. I made up my mind. From now on, Su Xiaolan will be your vermilion bird. After saying this, the woman turned around and walked away without looking at the weeping 6 vermilion bird sages. Soon, a complicated and intricate spell formation appeared before them. This spell formation was of a very high level. It was a god of creation stage spell formation that possessed the power to split heaven and earth. In the center of the spell formation was a statue of a soaring phoenix. It was at least 30,000 feet tall, and there was a circular spell altar on its back. Several thousand types of divine flames floated above the altar like willow, the wisps, causing Lin to gasp in amazement. Mr. Lin, please wait outside the spell formation. Xiaolan and I will enter the Vermilion Bird spell altar to carry out the Holy Birth handover ceremony. The great Empress Vermilion Bird looked at Lin with an extremely mesmerizing expression. Her words were also very difficult to refuse. No, I want to go in as well. I'm Xiaolan's personal bodyguard, literally. And Lin rejected the great Empress Vermilion Bird's proposal almost without any hesitation. How could he miss out on something as important as the succession of the saints? There was a hint of grievance on the great Empress Vermilion Bird's beautiful face. She flicked her sleeves and said, but if you get too close, you'll distract us during the Holy Birth handover. If that happens, it won't be worth it. Su Xiaolan stood up and said, it's okay. I'll feel more at ease with Lin by my side. Let him stay by my side. Great Empress Vermilion Bird, this most revered being of the Vermilion Bird tribe, finally relented under Su Xiaolan's insistence. But she insisted that Lin maintain a distance of 1 kilometer from them. Soon, the great Empress Vermilion Bird and Su Xiaolan began the handover of the Holy Birth. The Holy Birth handover process was quite simple. After the great Empress Vermilion Bird found a successor, she would sever her connection with the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence. Then, the successor would refine the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence and ascend to the paramount Holy Birth. However, this was merely a simple process. How difficult was it to find a qualified successor that was acknowledged by the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence? How difficult was it to completely separate the vermilion bird heart essence from its original owner? This was practically a grand feat akin to stealing the heavens and replacing the sun. The risks involved in carrying out this task were simply impossible to predict. Never would Su Xiaolan have imagined that she would somehow have to inherit the holy birth of the vermilion bird in order to resolve her karma. Although inheriting the holy birth could free the great Empress vermilion bird, this could also be considered a form of repayment. However, to Su Xiaolan herself, this was also an immeasurable opportunity. Fate sure is mysterious. The mysteries of this Tao caused her to feel a little fearful. Why is my luck so good? This was the question that Su Xiaolan was currently thinking about. Following the great Empress vermilion bird's request, her fingers danced in the air as she constructed one divine seal after another. The great Empress vermilion bird also tightly shut her eyes as she chanted one mystical word after another. In any case, Enlin couldn't understand what she was saying. However, he could still sense that these syllables were connected to a certain rhythm of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The vermilion bird heart essence hovered between the two of them. It was as red as blood, and it revolved rapidly as it exuded an eternal aura. The great Empress vermilion bird suddenly opened her beautiful blue eyes and said, "Offer your origin blood essence to the vermilion bird heart essence, and try to make it accept you." Upon hearing this, Su Xiaolan slit her wrist and allowed her origin blood essence to flow toward the vermilion bird heart essence. Like a tiny stream of water, the blood essence fused into the crimson bead. Immediately, the bead released a demonic red glow. It flickered incessantly, and its color also became increasingly pure. Su Xiaolan let loose a muffled groan, and her features paled slightly. Even her aura had become a little feeble. The wound on her wrist had yet to heal, and the essential blood essence within her body was still being absorbed relentlessly. And Lin frowned slightly upon seeing this. His heart ached slightly. Shouldn't a few drops be enough to absorb the origin blood essence? Why does it need to absorb so much? As if to dispel Lin's worries, the great Empress vermilion bird quickly explained with a focused expression. Refining the vermilion bird heart essence is a process of putting one's life on the line. One needs to feed the vermilion bird heart essence with origin blood essence so that it will possess a large portion of the refiner's aura. Only then will the two sides be compatible. Thus, an extremely large amount of blood essence is required. Upon hearing this, Lin's anxiety didn't subside. He looked at Su Xiaolan and discovered that she was in a very bad state. Furthermore, she was instinctively afraid and shrinking back. "Xiaolan, are you all right? Can you still hold on?" Lin asked anxiously. Su Xiaolan's brows were tightly furrowed, and her beautiful face became increasingly pale. I can still," and Lin was extremely worried. The holy birth and whatnot was secondary. Su Xiaolan's safety was the most important. With this in mind, his eyes gradually turned snow white. Divine inspection technique. And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan's condition and discovered that Su Xiaolan's condition was very strange. Not only was her origin blood essence continuously leaving her body, but even a certain aura was also leaving her body and fusing with the vermilion bird heart essence. What was it that was leaving Su Xiaolan's body? He couldn't see through it even with his divine inspection technique. Lin then turned his gaze toward the great Empress vermilion bird. He discovered that her body was enveloped by a thin membrane that completely prevented him from seeing through it. "Ha! Can't see through it? Sorry, this concerns Su Xiaolan's safety. No matter what it is, I and Lin will see through it clearly." And Lin didn't dare to rashly interrupt the holy birth handover. However, this didn't mean that he had to accept this state of ignorance. He had to figure out Su Xiaolan's true condition. And Lin's eyes became clear and transparent. At the same time, countless pieces of information appeared before his eyes and appeared in his mind. All the secrets were seen through by his eyes. Divine simulation technique. The power of Lin's divine sense was rapidly being consumed. He finally saw through Su Xiaolan's current condition. He also saw through the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's condition. He was stunned at first. It was as if he couldn't believe everything that was happening. However, in the next instant, he immediately flared up with rage. Boom! Boundless rage seemed to be about to burst through heaven and earth. And Lin's voice pierced through the clouds. Xiaolan, stop right now. Chapter 1923. And Lin used his divine simulation technique and discovered that not only was Su Xiaolan losing her blood essence, but she was also losing her destiny and life soul. As for the Great Empress Vermilion Bird, her connection with the Vermilion Bird heart essence was still extremely tight. She had no intention of severing the Vermilion Bird heart essence. No matter how much blood essence Su Xiaolan released, she couldn't refine the Vermilion Bird heart essence. At this moment, the Vermilion Bird heart essence was absorbing Su Xiaolan's blood essence, destiny, and life soul through an extremely secretive method. Then it was feeding the Great Empress Vermilion Bird. This wasn't inheriting the Holy Birth. This was taking Su Xiaolan's life. And Lin's roar startled the two people who were in the middle of the Holy Birth handover. And Lin, Su Xiaolan was slightly dazed. She didn't understand why Lin would ask her to stop at such a crucial moment. However, she still believed in Lin's words unconditionally. She stopped the infusion of blood essence and distanced herself from the Vermilion Bird heart essence. Seeing this, the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's expression changed drastically. Are you crazy? Don't stop. If you do this, both of us will suffer from the backlash of the Vermilion Bird heart essence. In serious cases, both our bodies and souls will be destroyed. Su Xiaolan didn't care and quickly retreated. She had read many things from Lin's expression. This holy birth handover ceremony might not be like what she had imagined. Sure enough, the moment Su Xiaolan distanced herself from the Vermilion Bird heart essence, the uncomfortable feeling in her heart dissipated significantly. Even a feeling of extreme weakness and pain started to lessen. PFFF. The Great Empress Vermilion Bird suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. She would indeed suffer a backlash. However, it seemed like only the Great Empress Vermilion Bird suffered a backlash. What did this mean? This meant that the Great Empress Vermilion Bird was still the one who truly controlled the Vermilion Bird heart essence and the entire mysterious ceremony. If the ceremony was interrupted like this, she would suffer the most intense backlash. If it really was Su Xiaolan who was refining the Vermilion Bird heart essence, then there was no way that Su Xiaolan could remain unscathed. It was more likely that Su Xiaolan had escaped from her opponent's blade. Great Empress Vermilion Bird, what a cunning move. You actually dared to absorb Xiaolan's blood essence, as well as her fate and soul. Lin was enraged to an unprecedented level. A terrifying aura swept through the surroundings, and an aura that wasn't inferior to that of a god of creation stage, Cultivator, engulfed heaven and earth. A look of surprise appeared on the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's face. It was as if she hadn't expected that Lin would actually be able to see through her mystic technique. But very quickly, a ruthless look appeared on her face, and she made a grabbing motion in the direction of the fleeing Su Xiaolan. Crack! Dark red energy appeared from all directions, imprisoning Su Xiaolan in the void. This was the supreme origin power that belonged to the Vermilion Bird, and it had an absolute suppressive effect on Su Xiaolan. Her life was given to me by me in the first place. What's wrong with me taking back everything that belongs to me? A sinister smile appeared on the Great Empress Vermilion Bird's face as she rapidly dashed towards Su Xiaolan. The Vermilion Bird heart essence in front of her once again erupted with a blinding light, and it stimulated the bloodline within the female's body. Su Xiaolan screamed in pain as blood spurted out from the wound on her wrist again. The Vermilion Bird heart essence greedily sucked away Su Xiaolan's blood. This time, it was brazenly sucking her blood essence, and its speed was extremely fast. Not only was it devouring her essence blood, but it was also frenziedly absorbing her fate, her divine sense, and her life force. Moreover, it was also starting to strip away her bloodline. You're seeking death." An enraged roar sounded like the roar of a heavenly god. And Lin instantly activated his 5 elemental body, and his golden will tore through the void. In the blink of an eye, he arrived beside the great Empress Vermilion Bird and punched her. The great Empress Vermilion Bird extended a slender hand and lightly blocked the path of Lin's fist. Her expression was cold and indifferent. "Do you really think that you're invincible just because you've subdued the 6 Vermilion Bird Sages? You don't understand true power at all." Bang! The sound of bones shattering reverberated in the air. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's eyes widened in shock as she saw that her palm had already been twisted and ruptured. Boom! The fist projection exploded forth. The Vermilion Bird spell Alter was shattered into pieces by the shock waves from the fist projection. The great Empress Vermilion Bird's body was blasted back tens of thousands of meters. "Su Xiaolan, are you all right?" And Lin retracted his fist and looked towards Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan took advantage of the instant when the great Empress Vermilion Bird was injured to quickly struggle free. Then, she transformed into a bolt of lightning and increased the distance between her and the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence. The power of the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence possessed an absolute suppressive power over the power within her body. It was as if a low-level being was completely powerless before a higher-level being. "I'm fine. Be careful," and Lin. Su Xiaolan's face was deathly pale as she retreated. However, she still shouted loudly. At the same time, she formed seals with her hands and unleashed millions upon millions of holy flame arrows that were powerful enough to destroy the divine Tao toward the great Empress Vermilion Bird. "Everything you have was given to you by me. Everything you use is my power. How are you going to fight me?" The great Empress Vermilion Bird's body came to a halt, and her battered hand had already recovered. Her blue eyes ferociously glared at the oncoming holy flame arrows. The arrows that filled the sky were instantly unable to maintain their forms under her glare, and they exploded into balls of flames where they stood. The true Vermilion Bird could perfectly suppress those who possessed the Vermilion Bird bloodline. Rip! Just as the great Empress Vermilion Bird was dealing with Su Xiaolan, a deafening ripping sound suddenly erupted. The great Empress Vermilion Bird discovered in horror that the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence floating in the distance had actually been sliced in half by Lin's evil-slaying sword. A rich, dark red Vermilion Bird power surged into the surroundings like a flood. "No!" The great Empress Vermilion Bird lost her composure again. "How is this possible? The Vermilion Bird Heart Essence is a unique item condensed from the supreme Vermilion Bird's nomological laws. How could it be sliced apart so easily?" And Lin laughed. "The supreme Vermilion Bird's nomological laws? Sorry, but his evil-slaying sword possessed the power to slice apart nomological laws. Coupled with his Tao sword, how could it not slice apart the unprotected Vermilion Bird Heart Essence?" The great Empress Vermilion Bird immediately used all of her power to summon back the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence. Having suffered a backlash from the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence's destruction, she was severely wounded once again. Streaks of bloody wounds appeared on her body, and blood flowed continuously from them. How could Lin and Su Xiaolan let go of such a good opportunity? Now that they had completely fallen out with each other, the only thing they could do was to kill each other. At the same time, they pounced toward the nearby Great Empress Vermilion Bird. The Great Empress Vermilion Bird swallowed the Vermilion Bird Heart Essence, which had been glued back together into her stomach again. Then, her aura soared explosively, and the projection of a gigantic and majestic phoenix appeared behind her. Its holy and noble aura seemed as if it wanted to trample the entire heavens beneath its feet. Before Su Xiaolan had even attacked, she could already feel a suffocating might bearing down on her. She had clearly already reached the pinnacle of the Vermilion Bird Tao. However, the might unleashed by the great Empress Vermilion Bird still completely suppressed the bloodline power within her body. "Kneel!" The great Empress Vermilion Bird yelled as she looked at Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan felt as if a supreme god had appeared before her and demanded her to submit. Meanwhile, her bloodline had already involuntarily submitted to this being. At the same time, her legs started to move uncontrollably, and she was about to kneel down. "You kneel first." And Lin's eyes turned pure gold, and a supreme divine might crashed into the great Empress Vermilion Bird's body. This was the super divine might technique, and it could instantly make the 6 Vermilion Bird sages kneel at the same time. The great Empress Vermilion Bird lived up to her reputation as the most arrogant and powerful being. Even though she was struck by the super divine might technique, she was still able to remain standing. However, a pair of large hands had already pressed down viciously on her shoulders. Boom! The great Empress Vermilion Bird knelt down. In the instant before Su Xiaolan's knees hit the ground, she had already knelt down. Then Su Xiaolan's knees finally hit the ground, and she completely knelt to the ground. Just like that, the two women knelt to each other. A peculiar silence ensued.